you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who take on my hate. Look me better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Deku Finds dannyphantom in MHA. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of RusEmp on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Danny stared at his phone for what felt like hours. It was the evening of the following day, and he had spent the whole time wondering about the photo he had made. While at work he was absent-minded, of which he was reminded by his colleagues multiple times. Enough for the half-ghost to finally snap out of his thoughts and finally concentrate at sorting those veggies. But postponing the issue meant that eventually it would catch up with him, and he would be forced to address it. Phantom was spending the evening all absorbed in his thoughts. The half-ghost was running out of time. Eventually the cops would use the card he had left behind as a conscious citizen, and the man would either be caught or he would change his number. The half-ghost didn't care about the fate of the one making those business cards. He didn't have any illusions about the nature of the man's enterprise. The villain had that card in his pockets, which implied the criminal nature of that jurin. There were only the name and the number. No company name, no address, nothing, as if giving away the number was the biggest concession the man could allow himself to make. And since Phantom never found any official information on the guy, it only confirmed the teen's suspicions. The boy's only regret if the man got caught was the lost opportunity for him to attain what he wanted. What did he want? The answer to that was very simple. He needed upgrades. The upgrades he was going to get only in the underground black market. After all, only proper heroes were allowed to gallivant with official support items. He wasn't one of them, so it left him little option. If it meant mingling with criminals, then fine. They were going to get busted anyways. Or maybe he was just putting too much faith in the local police force. Phantom might have been a formidable opponent in that world of single-powered heroes and villains. But after watching Eraserhead, the idea of his own powers one day betraying him didn't leave his mind. It happened before, and he was utterly helpless in those situations. It reminded the half-ghost that for all his power there was probably some fish in the ocean that was bigger than him, that could beat him even while having only one ability. Phantom had to be conscious of his limits, even if he was getting too overzealous. The half-ghost needed a preventative measure, something that could save his backside in a pinch and probably aid his endeavors in other ways. While he doubted that the locals had something to assist a half-ghost, he could, in theory, modify the tools to suit him. He just needed something to use as a basis. It wasn't going to be his first time associating with the bad guys. Mind you, each Christmas so far they all went to a common party and had fun. And they also cooperated on multiple occasions, even if it was only to take down a bigger menace, be it the ghost investigation ward or the undead tyrant himself. That thought brought some solace to the teen, because he was going to involve himself with the criminals with one goal only, to be better at taking down said criminals. Since he had made such deals with his own conscience before, Phantom was willing to compromise now. But then the idea gained another layer. It went without saying that the teen was one step away from going broke. There was no possible way for him to actually buy the goods from the black market. So, the half-ghost intended to harass the criminals until they gave him what he wanted. It was something very dangerous, for if he angered the wrong people, his peaceful life was going to end without even starting. He had left his world precisely to avoid that very thing. Nonetheless, he had a plan. First, the teen needed to conduct his small investigation and find where the underground smiths worked. His first clue was the business card. But then, what could he offer that man for the information? Money was out of the question, same as committing a crime for a favor. That left the ghost with nothing. Still, looking at his phone, the half-ghost decided that an attempt had to be made first. Whatever the outcome was, he wouldn't know it until he tried. Dialing the number from the business card, Danny started waiting, each ring making the teen more and more doubtful. Still, someone from the other end chose to respond to the call. Yeah, Danny inaudibly took some breath. Good evening. I'm talking to Jurin, correct? A brief silence followed. I don't recognize your voice, whoever you are, or your number. Perhaps you shouldn't give your business cards away so easily. Sir, Danny peeked through the barred window of his attic room. Some passersby may actually get a hold of one. Since it fell from the pocket of a criminal, I figured that you either offer legal advice or you are the man's supplier. What made you think that? The man sounded disinterested, like he knew that nothing was going to harm him. That guy looked like a person who would drink battery acid, thus not able to create the tools he possessed. The tools I happened to be interested in. Oh, the man's voice gained the undertones of interest. And how do I know that the possessor of this card is not in prison and I am not being set up? Oh, he certainly is in prison. And I can guarantee you that eventually the police will find that number as well. However, if I wanted to set you up, I would have passed the phone to the detained and told him to invite you, don't you agree? A good point. How did you come across the card, then? I took a picture of it while the hero was too busy saving the hostages. I was just passing by. So, what do you say? Do I pass your little exam? With flying colors, the man responded sarcastically. Fine, then. I reckon you need a suit. I already have one. I'm looking for the upgrades. Are you the one who makes them? Nah, I am just a humble broker. I can arrange for the goods. You can come and see for yourself. Just like that, huh? Time is money, kid. In any case, you got any specifics? What quirk do you have? It was questionable whether or not it was safe to share that knowledge, but Danny figured that it wouldn't be that harmful. If they had something against ectoplasm, they were already equipped to deal with him. If they didn't, then what was there to even talk about? But just in case, how do I know this knowledge won't be used against me? You are trading anonymity with us for the anonymity with the law enforcement. Besides, I have principles, boyo. Surprising, I know, but you can be sure. Your secret is safe with me. Fine, my quirk lets me control ectoplasm. What? Like that fairy tale ghost substance? You are making it sound like you have no idea about it. That lack of knowledge was both reassuring and disappointing. But when he thought about it, yes, that was it. I guess there is the first time for anything, boy. I'm sure we can come up with something. Let me see the workshops you cooperate with, Danny blurted out. Jiren sounded surprised by the boy's audacity. If you don't know what ectoplasm is, then you can't build the stuff from scratch. I have the necessary knowledge, and I know what materials to use. However, you have to understand that this is not done over the phone. Try me. Phantom's lips thinned. Sorry, Your Highness. Maybe I should explain the principles behind Hadron Collider while I'm at it. I would be careful with words if I were you. I can press a button and there will be no deal. But I guess we can work with what we got. This doesn't depend on me alone, though. If the masters I know have no qualms about it and don't know what this ectoplasm is, then we will use your input. That will do, I suppose. Oh, and don't call this number again. Useless. I'll call you from another one. Got it? Yeah, I'll wait until then. And like that, the call was over. The conversation had gone better than he could ever hope. He was getting into the workshop free of charge, which was perfect for snatching the nuts and bolts he could use to make his own upgrades, and putting a stop to the illegal activity. But did he truly have the ability to put down whoever was present there? If not, he had the ability to get out of there and call heroes on them. That was the main part of the aforementioned plan. If everyone in the workshop was too busy with the attacking heroes, and the heroes were too busy detaining the criminals, certainly they would miss a detail or two vanishing. Danny grinned deviously. He was performing a community service and getting something in return. One would say that it wasn't very heroic, and they would be right to an extent, but the half-ghost too had to eat and defend himself somehow. Those were the talks of an idealist, and Phantom hardly could consider himself as such. Morals often were sidelined when survival was the only thing that mattered. Going back to the whole cooperation with his opponents and dubious standards, it's not that Danny liked the Christmas truce much. All those smiling faces, the playful jabs at his expense just days after they tried to kill him, for a day pretending that nothing was wrong. They were the reason he was sleep deprived. They were the cause of nearly every scar on his body. Everyone knew what had happened before and what would happen when the following day arrived. The same beating, the same vicious cycle of the ghost boy saving the day and thwarting their plans, and then mercifully releasing them like a fisherman who is in it for the process. He wasn't even imprisoning them. He hated them all even more on that day, even if it was a day for him to take a breather. It made him wonder how the local heroes handled this. Was it just because they were in abundance and could share the burden? Danny didn't know that. He was the only hero of his world, and he was cracking in a single small town, solving problems of ghostly kind only. On the other hand, the heroes also lived off of saving the people. They didn't have other jobs, school, or anything of the sort. It was their job, a job like any other, even if coupled with much greater risks. Or maybe Danny was just too weak spirit-wise, succumbing to exhaustion and the desire to rest for once. He didn't know. He really wasn't sure of anything concerning himself. Hell, he wasn't even sure what to eat the next day. That world really was giving the half-ghost a lot of room for thinking and reflecting upon himself. Hopefully it could bear some results. The rest of the week passed without anything of note happening. It was to be expected, with Jiren's number and info probably leaked by the arrested criminal. He was going to move and lay low for a while. All Danny could do was building his dream castles, excitedly thinking about the tools he could build to make both his fighting and living conditions better, all the while continuing his diligent work at the shop. He found little to no news about the electric villain, which to his experienced mind meant that the police was currently investigating the matter and didn't want any extra information to leak. Or they just ignored it. One of the two. The latter was still hardly viable, because to let go of a case that left a whole district with no power would be an act worth protesting against. Danny himself, while not being primarily focused on that, was still curious as to what was the bigger idea behind the attack. Whatever it was, the guy obviously wasn't working alone. Maybe Jiren knew, but Danny wasn't going to ask anything beyond what he himself needed. And speaking of whom, the half-ghost eventually received a call from the shadowy broker. Excusing himself from the workplace, Danny found a safe spot to talk. Jiren was concise that time. He merely stated that nobody knew how to handle ectoplasm and what it was like. Thus, the teen was invited to see the master that was willing to experiment. The meeting spot was also set. The extra stipulations were an odd idea, and Danny naturally suspected a foul play, so he prepared for the worst. The teen started looking around the industrial area. It was located near the sea, and he was searching for a man in purple suit, as Jiren had so elaborately hinted. His search was conducted while the teen was in his ghost form. It really was pain knowing that both of his appearances compromised him, but little dannyphantom was going to stay under the radar. The human part's feigned innocence was more important. There weren't any people around the area, which was concerning for a while, until the teen remembered that it was Sunday, so of course nobody would be around. After floating around for a while, the teen could see a black van, and there, leaning against it and smoking a cigarette, was a man wearing purple. It was a middle-aged man with gray hair, goatee and small untended mustache. Taking a small sigh, Danny flew towards him. Once he soundlessly landed on the roof of the van, the teen dropped his invisibility. "Hello there," the teen cheerfully greeted. "Sorry I'm late, the destination was very unspecific." Danny saw no point in acting tough now when they met face to face. His appearance most of the time always acted against him in that regard. The man straightened up and turned towards him, a bit of surprise flashing from under his circular glasses. "You are the one who called?" Jiren asked. "Yep, you sound surprised." Danny jumped off the van. "How old are you, kid?" 15, Danny said and crossed his hands. "You don't look much older than 13, the man said and smirked, flashing a gap in place of where front teeth should have been. Jiren then took his time to examine the white-haired teen in front of him. Danny's assumption about his appearance was correct. The broker remained unimpressed. There were impressive muscles underneath the black suit, but the broker wasn't going to be intimidated by the boy only because of that. Speaking of what he was wearing, what's with the getup? Danny raised an eyebrow and examined his clothes, from the gloves to the pants. "Is something wrong with the looks?" "It looks like something my mommy would sew, kid." "As a matter of fact, it was made by mine," Danny responded without batting an eye. "Although it was meant to be a normal hazmat. I can see why you would need something else. It's not a proper costume at all. But I'm not the expert, so I'm just taking you to the professional." This brings us to my favorite topic. How is the situation on the financial front of yours, kid? Got enough lunch money saved up? Danny hissed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Not great, admittedly." "Thought so. I have an eye out for such things." "Well, I'd like to know about your quirk first." "Why? I offer you a solution, kid, like a kind and sensible person that I am." "How much do you know about the underground masquerade?" "Wow, you guys dedicated a club to costume parties." Jiren sighed. That kid had no clue about how things were run around there, which must have been evident from his age and Western appearance. That or he was just mocking him. Maybe both. "This is a nice way to get money, kid. If you can fight well, that is. It is a hidden fighting pit. It did take quite a beating, from All Might, no less, but the enterprise was so well off that it was a shame not to simply move the pit and continue the fighting. Let me guess. It is also illegal, and it serves the purpose of drug trafficking and gambling." "Huh, you got it all figured out, eh? That's what all of the fighting pits are about." Speaking from experience, the man huffed. "It shouldn't really concern ya. The point is, you want upgrades, I know you do. But you also lack the funds to buy them. The prize money even from one victorious fight will be enough for a minor upgrade. And if someone who is watching gets interested in you, then you can even get one for free. It will make me a walking advertisement, though." "Precisely. But a smart person doesn't look into a gifted horse's mouth." "Or what? You thought you will be the first smartass to try and rob us, kid." Danny realized that plan was already figured out, much to his inner dismay. I never excluded that possibility. But your offer sounds good, too, he smirked. Why are you being so cooperative, though? Simple, boyo. If you lose, I won't be at any disadvantage and the knowledge of my face dies with ya. If you win, I get paid for my services. I am not at any loss in any case. So those are the fights to the death. Are you scared? Danny smirked and put his hands on his belt. I fought bastards tougher than anything you can throw at me. I sure hope so. The latter option will still be preferable. I'd like you to make some money for me. Get in the back of the van, then, kid. I was just heading there. Don't stick out, or everyone will think I kidnapped a kid. Have you ever? There was one time. Doesn't matter. As Jiren went to the driver's seat, Danny called after the man. Are you charging for taxi services, too? Most certainly. After a lengthy ride, the black van eventually stopped. After sitting in one place for around an hour, Danny immediately got up and exited the car through its back door, scanning his surroundings and stretching his sore muscles. It was, by all means, a spacey garage, filled with all attributes of a service station. There were even some cars undergoing the repairs, unattended they may have been at the moment. The doors were closed behind them, for a moment submerging most of the place in darkness. Jiren went towards the light switch, but then, seeing the teen, he stood at his spot, confused. The reason behind it was the boy's body and its unnatural glow. Danny turned his toxic eyes towards him, creating an even eerier atmosphere. Shaking his head, Jiren flicked on the lights and gestured for the teen to follow him. The man hoped that exit from the garage was blocked by a heavy iron door, so out of place in a place such as that, which by all logic meant that there was something important behind it. Jiren knocked on it in a specific rhythm, which seemed to be the password. A pair of eyes appeared behind a small open hatch. Ah, Jiren, that you. Come on in. The door opened, revealing a slenderly built man, whose eyes seemed to be very slug-like, located on skinny stalks. The doorman was the one to talk first. What brings you here, man? I found a potential client. He was willing to participate in a fight. When the doorman turned to face the teen, he was already standing near him, curiously examining the person who must have had a very unfortunate quirk. Out of surprise, the doorman jumped at that personal space violation. You have a funny quirk, Danny pointed out, before grinning and stepping back, outstretching his hand. Nice to meet you. Oh, yeah, punk. The man's look turned angry. Probably. He lacked any eyebrows for Danny to make a guess. Just get in already. Eesh. The teen followed Jiren deeper inside, down the staircase. No hard feelings, man. A friendly advice, Jiren hissed. If you want to walk out of here in one piece, don't make an enemy out of everyone you meet. Sorry, Danny winced. I am just used to that. What's this place anyway? The underground masquerade used to be located in Osaka before it all went to shit. It was decided to hide in plain sight instead, right under the heroes' noses. It is more difficult infrastructure-wise, but much safer. There used to be an underground road beneath the place, but during a villain fight it was damaged beyond repair. Since they were building another route already, it was decided to abandon it for a time and just pour cement over the entrance. After a little bit of expansion, we got a spacey place for an arena. Oh, your quirk isn't going to destroy it all, I hope. I can control it just fine. It won't come to that, I promise. Also, everyone present wears their masks, even the spectators. Everything that takes place here is recorded with cameras, so it is a safety measure. That's why you call it a masquerade. Jiren nodded and dug in his pockets, fishing up a sleep mask with a couple of holes in it. Put it on, Jiren commanded. I'm going to look like a dumbass, complained Danny. Look at your costume, kid. You already look the part. I'm not spending more than I need on you. The half-ghost took it and begrudgingly put it on his face. Seeing Jiren put on a proper masquerade mask, Phantom turned even more grumpy. The two of them finally got down, and Danny was taken aback by the loud noises. The thunderous cacophony was fueled by the sound of fighting in the arena located in the middle of the spacious hall, the loud cheering from the crowds, the loudmouth commenters speaking about what was transpiring. Jiren led the teen away from the arena, towards a room to the side. Looking at the teen, the broker started to speak. Alright, boy. That's how it goes. You go in, register for a fight, and the rest is self-explanatory. You'll be watching? Yes. Duh. I need to see if my client is capable enough. Off you go. Danny sighed and entered the room. It appeared like a normal office, with a normal man sitting behind it. The normality of it all made the teen amused. Once he entered, the man looked up at him in confusion. Do you need something? He asked nonchalantly. Yahaim, I want to sign up for a fight. You. The man examined the newcomer. Kid, this isn't a prom. It's a death pit. I know. I can and I want to fight. So I ask that you let me. I've seen a fair share of stupid brats thinking they can do everything. and those who are now 6 feet under. Then I'll make sure not to die. Well, the man sighed. I guess there are people who will enjoy seeing a kid decapitated, the freaks. Fine, just sign a few papers. Seriously, paperwork in a place like this. Just sign them. The man handed him a sheet of paper. By doing that, you acknowledge that you might get killed and that you have no complaints with us. Furthermore, you agree on some medical treatment. Despite this being a fight that can end in death, we try to make sure that that is not the case. Veterans bring us viewers. Viewers bring cash, so we try to keep at least some fighters alive. That seemed logical. Sighing, the teen signed the papers. Putting them away, the man then handed the teen another sheet. Now, we need to know your pseudonym, by which you will be addressed during the fight. That was a tricky question that made Danny think. He could write the name Phantom and be done with it. However, the current activity was illegal, and the teen didn't want to sully the ghostly hero's name. What if he actually wanted to one day step into the light? The reputation in the death pit was going to stick to him forever. So, he needed to use the name that wasn't so far off, someone whose name was already smeared enough. Thus, he wrote it down and handed the paper to the man behind the desk. Pariah, can't say it fits, but it's your funeral, kid. Today your number will be 26. You go out of this room and to the left. Then, in that room you go downstairs and wait until your number is announced. Rookies like you are pitted against each other randomly. Danny nodded, turning around. As he went towards the waiting room, he couldn't help but chuckle. Picking a name of his predecessor, the former Ghost King, was an interesting idea. Phantom didn't know how the tyrant would react to his name being used in such a manner by a man who bested him in combat. It wasn't a homage by any means. Danny just thought up of the first name that had a certain connection to him. It was also somewhat poetic, since being a pariah was what brought him to that place. So, he was going to use that name to try and replenish a piece of what was lost. Danny didn't plan on coming to the place often, but an extra safety bag was always good. He could at least start eating properly. Almost lost in his daydreams, the half-ghost made his way to the room, being immediately faced with a very noteworthy crowd. The place was lacking in the whole fighting department, which made sense if you thought about it. The fighters, no matter their animosities, didn't want to show off their quirks just yet. That element of surprise was something they all valued, as it could always give them an edge over their opponents. Danny could relate to that idea, although some people were simply unable to hide the fact. There existed quirks that were impossible to hide. Their appearance largely gave it away from the get-go, be it large arms, solid skin, or a ton of muscles. They all were most likely to go for strong punches. Danny doubted that they could create much of a show. People came to that place to watch people use their quirks, but simply punching each other was probably not very entertaining. The half-ghost intended to give people what they wanted. As the teen passed fellow fighters, one of them stood up. He was of the aforementioned mundane category, built like a bull and certainly looking the part due to the 2 protruding horns. The man had gray skin and one eye located between those horns. It almost felt like the ground shook when the man approached the half-ghost. "Hey, kid, are you lost?" he asked mockingly. "Depends," Danny shrugged. "This is a place where fighters wait for their turn, right? Is this a sleeping mask you got on?" Someone among the crowd exclaimed and started to laugh, accompanied by others. "Yes," the teen responded. "I had to improvise. I assure you, it won't affect the fight in any way." "So you are actually fighting?" "Geez, I would hate to spray the kid's brains all over the floor," the Minotaur guy huffed. "No, you would not. From your face I understand that it will bring you a disturbing amount of pleasure." Danny tapped on the giant's chest, fixed his gloves, and sat on the nearest bench. Nobody bothered him afterwards. The people were simply too busy preparing for their matches or watching others fight. There was a TV screen in the room meant to do just that. Danny occasionally took a glance at the fights, noticing a very striking feature of the arena. The contestants seemed to utilize whatever they wanted: guns, knives, and other tools. They also injected themselves with some bizarre stuff right out in the open. From the occasional comments of other fighters, Danny learned that it was something called trigger. Basically, it boosted a person's quirk, but it also wiped away any sense of reason. The person basically became a fast-moving truck with a dead driver. The half-ghost wasn't sure if it would work on him, but it's not like he was willing to try. Drugs are a menace, not a solace, and he could rely on his powers. Eventually, the teen's number was announced. Danny stood up and went towards the exit every fighter before him had used. He was momentarily blinded by the projector lights and assaulted by the commenter's voice. "Alright, folks, this will be the last fight for today. We have some late arrivals, after all. Let's see, on one side we have a newbie, and we know how you love those. The kid may not look like much, and I'm not even sure if it is even alright by our rules, but who cares? Pariah is his name, everyone. I don't know what quirk he has, but let it be a surprise to all of us. Let us give him a proper welcome and wish him some luck, because his opponent will be someone many of you know. After all, he has a record of astounding victories before. Meet the lovely 3 centners of muscles, Minotaurus. As Danny entered the arena and bowed theatrically before the audience, he heard the familiar rumble behind him. Turning around, the teen was faced with the chest of the man he had come to know. So we are actually fighting, kid, the horned man smirked viciously. Really, of all the people I get the most boring one. Danny grumbled, looking up. The man was almost twice as tall as him. The fighters stood in the opposite ends of the ring, waiting for the call to start. The half-ghost examined his surroundings. The reinforced glass was probably enough to hold them inside, but the teen still wondered how strong it was. The floor, a single solid rock. Someone among the staff must have been good at controlling stones. Danny then concentrated on the opponent, who was eagerly cracking his knuckles. It appeared his earlier assessment had been correct. He really was going to enjoy the fight. As long as he was winning, that is. And begin. The announcer shouted. Minotaurus immediately burst forward. In a few seconds, the man was already near the opponent. The next thing he saw was the boy's smirk. His giant fist made an impact, smashing the spot Danny's head was at. For a split second everyone thought that the boy was done for, only to then see nobody there. The bull had only left several cracks on the glass. Phew, that was close. Minotaurus looked to the side and saw the grinning half-ghost standing on his shoulder. How did he get there? The man immediately shook him off, and Danny softly landed on the ground behind him. Wow, have you actually seen this guy move? The announcer asked. I most certainly didn't. What an amazing speed. Minotaurus huffed out hot air, hit the ground with his foot, preparing to lunge again. Wish I brought my red cloth, Danny commented. As the man lunged, the half-ghost readied up. He could try and exhaust the bull, but who knew how long it would take? Forcing the enemy to hit everything around, thus causing the severe harm to himself, was also hardly an option. The enemy probably thought this through. Danny wanted to keep his power showcase to the minimum. But what the hell? The bull bolted forward as the teen pointed his palm towards him. The next second, a green barrier separated them. The man's fist hit it with all the strength he had, but the counteracting force only pushed the bull back, not without causing damage both to the barrier and to Minotaurus's own arm. The closest viewers could even hear an almost metallic sound made upon the impact. So that's your quirk? The man asked, rubbing his fist. Making shields. Not exactly, Danny smirked, sitting on a green stall that had appeared out of nowhere. I'm not limited only to that. You can't attack with a chair, kid, Minotaurus barked a laugh. Oh, you are quite right, Danny kept smiling behind his shield. But I told you. A single swipe of his hand, and the barrier burst into hundreds of small light beams, barraging the shocked giant with hundreds of small pellets, as if he was firing a massive machine gun. They shocked, burned like fire and acid at the same time, leaving the man's chest covered in a pleiad of wounds. With each shot the shield got smaller, for the ectoplasm within it was depleting in order to fire, and eventually the shield completely dispersed. After it was gone, Danny lazily got up, the stall disappearing behind him right after. I'm not limited at all, he finished. Up at the premises, Jiren was watching the fight below with great interest. It appeared that the boy was in possession of a very powerful quirk. Furthermore, he was talented enough to utilize it properly. He was, however, the loudmouth type, and the broker didn't like their kind much. He knew what their strategies were. They wanted to distract their opponents, anger them, force them to make mistakes. Unfortunately, it worked both ways, and the brainpower spent on witty comebacks was the same brainpower not used for reacting to the attack. Jiren was now interested in that kid, despite everything. He had the potential. Would you look at that, folks? It seems the kid is full of surprises. The announcer spoke. It also looks like it hurt. I am fine. The bull roared, hitting the ground and ripping off his black, charred t-shirt. You want to die so badly, huh, you brat? I specifically didn't aim for your head. You know, Danny shrugged, pointing at his own face. I expect the same courtesy. Girls won't fall for a black eye. I'll make you pay for underestimating me, the giant growled. I'll smash you into a pulp. With a roar, the man began the attack. Phantom created another barrier in his way, but this time the bull ran around it, swinging his leg instead of a fist. Unexpected, quick and powerful, the hit landed into the half-ghost's stomach. The teen had all the air kicked out of his guts, and he himself flew to another end of the arena. The crowd felt excited upon seeing the fight getting more and more heated, while the bull began to bask in the audience's cheers. The man roared and hit himself on the scarred chest. Danny's back hit the glass wall, and if he had a spine in his ghost form, he most certainly would have broken some joint. He slowly slid down to the ground and landed on his feet, pumping the energy to heal the wounded parts. With a corner of his eye he saw the unrelenting opponent rapidly coming in to finish the job. Alright, he really had underestimated that man's intelligence. As another hit was about to connect, the teen pushed himself towards Minotaurus, turning intangible right after. The teen flew right through the attacker, and while still in the air behind and above him, Phantom fired a powerful ectoblast downwards. The force behind it was enough to propel him even higher, and on the receiving end Minotaurus let out a scream of pain, drowned out by the big explosion. The smoke filled the entire arena, only slowly escaping tiny breathing holes. At first the giant couldn't find the strength to get up, feeling as if a nuke had been dropped on his head. But the adrenaline started to flow through his veins, and the downed fighter slowly got up, shielding his face from the smoke particles. Minotaurus remembered that he was not alone, and the kid was still somewhere nearby. Then a chilling laughter reached his ears. The fighter turned to where the sound came from, but still found nothing. You still won't go down. Amazing, really. The man looked at his shoulder again, and he could swear the kid was there just a moment ago. But then the unmistakable pair of deathly green eyes shone in front of him, on his own eye level, as if they were floating. Without thinking, Minotaurus ran forward, but only hit the sturdy wall at full speed. No, no, no. I'm not falling for that again. The half-ghost's voice continued to mock him. You got me because I thought you were a dum-dum. Show yourself, you coward. Minotaurus yelled, only hitting thin air, and deny myself a chance to laugh at you some more. Danny asked loudly. Ah, fine then. The man could see the same pair of eyes floating right before him, and not moving away, pal. Come on, take your chance this time. Minotaurus decided to take it. His legs prepared to kick off, his hands at the ready. Even his horns could come at handy. The giant rushed forward, and in the last moment, through the thin smoke he only saw the boy's vicious smirk, the vicious look in his toxic green eyes, and the fist engulfed in emerald flames. The next second there was an impact. The force behind the hit was so great that it launched the giant back, and even the reinforced glass surrendered and cracked to pieces. The man flew outside of the arena, only by miracle not landing on any of the viewers. The smoke actively poured out of the arena, and from it emerged the victorious fighter. Danny jumped down from the elevated spot and approached the fallen giant, but not without sparing a glance towards the announcer. I think it counts as a knockout, Chief, he called. Well, he doesn't seem to get up. All right. The announcer raised his voice once more. That was a quick but exciting match, was it not? And so many special effects to boot. This was an outstanding debut of our newest fighter, Pariah. Please come to the administrator's office for your reward. We will be waiting for your next match, kid. That man sure was excitable, the teen thought. But that wasn't what concerned him at the moment. Danny approached Minotaurus and crouched nearby. He checked the man's pulse, and to his great relief, it was still there. For a moment the teen feared that he hadn't measured the power behind the strike properly. The half-ghost hit the man's chest once more, and it seemed that the vitals weren't damaged. That man was extremely tough, it appeared. Tougher than the glass barrier holding the fighters in. Danny demanded to call for a doctor, and a couple of medics appeared soon after. From his thoughts the teen was snapped out by a hand on his shoulder. Danny looked up and saw Jiren standing there, with a lit cigarette in his mouth. That was some show, kid. I admit, I misjudged you. He handed the teen an envelope. Your winnings for tonight. I took the liberty to take those instead of you. Phantom opened the envelope and saw that it was filled with yen bills. Briefly counting those, the teen looked at the broker. You already took something from there, didn't you? The half-ghost got up and glared. The seal was already broken. I merely counted the win and took my service fee. You still got away with plenty, because very few people were willing to bet on ya. It won't happen again, but the size of winnings themselves will grow as you progress and become more well-known. It also depends on your rank as a villain. I am not a villain, Danny commented quietly as they went towards the exit. Do you think the police cares? Maybe not. The teen looked at the giant who was being taken away by the doctors. Will he be all right? Huh? Jiren looked where Danny was pointing. Hell if I know. What did you do to him anyway to throw him outside so hard? I punched. Phantom shrugged. The kid really wasn't a villain material, Jiren concluded. If he was so genuinely concerned about the guy trying to murder him, what was there to say about people who weren't? It was an interesting case, with how strong the boy's quirk appeared to be. If the kid ever became a licensed hero, it would be really bad for his business. You know, the line between a vigilante and villain is non-existent to many of policemen. And if they see you around here, or even saving folks up there, you are still a criminal. That's the injustice of this world. And you work with both such categories, right? Of course, I don't care who my clients are as long as they are nice to me. I simply repay in kind. Speaking of work, you still up for visiting a workshop? I say you got enough to at least purchase the materials. Yeah, let's go there, Danny nodded. It's not so far. Meanwhile, in the police department several miles away, Eraserhead appeared, clad in his costume and looking as tired as ever. Just as he had asked the police, they contacted him as soon as there were some findings about the recent case, and he had made haste to come as soon as possible. While at the same time avoiding the crowded places in his usual fashion, he slipped inside the department. Once inside, he was quickly accompanied to the office of the man many heroes around knew. Sitting at the desk before the officer, Eraserhead took a deep sigh. The place wasn't anything special. An office was an office, with its multitude of shelves stacked with files and other documents, the messy desk where the unfinished paperwork rested. It was a painful reminder of another year filled with the same duties for him as well. The entrance exams were going to take place soon, too. After several minutes of waiting, the door to the office was open, and another man walked in. There wasn't anything special about his looks, but he was wearing a tan coat usually seen on old-fashioned detectives. Tsukachi was his name. I'm glad you could make it here, Eraserhead. You said there was something to the case of that electric villain. The hero remained sitting in his spot, his eyes trailing the detective as he sat in front of him. I'll be quick. His name is Short Circuit, Tsukachi said as he dropped a file on the desk. A fitting moniker, the hero thought sarcastically. Eraserhead unfolded the file, and as he was reading, the officer was giving him a digest. His quirk is electric charge. The guy's list of felonies is long, mostly simple assaults. A murder, too. He served his sentence and now he either became smarter or works for someone with a bigger brain. I was originally inclined towards the latter. Now we have a concrete lead. The villain confessed that he was meant to be a distraction. Their group's intention was to steal support items. Coincidentally, one of the warehouses belonging to Detonarat was raided, as I have just been informed. I believe we are dealing with the black market here. With the power outage, the villains could break in before reserve generators were turned on. Exactly. The company was also willing to share the information they had. That's odd for them. It has been a week since the incident, and they are telling this only now. Perhaps they wanted to assess the damages first, or contemplated whether or not the information about the raid should be made public. Aizawa finished. It seems they chose to share it with us nonetheless. The stolen prosthetics and support items also had trackers on them. It is a special measure against theft. And now we know where the thieves are hiding the stolen property, because Detonarat gave us the location. I ask that you help us in the raid, since you were present there when it started. Eraserhead nodded. I'll go. There is also that mysterious vigilante. I've asked to look into the registry, and there are some children with invisibility. However, I've also been told that he could, apparently, make objects intangible. There were also the sightings of lasers. He obviously didn't work alone, but we have too little information to draw any definite conclusions. We don't have the resources to ask so many for a case as minor, even if it is a vigilante. The hero got up. Then we will concentrate on what we've got. I know you aren't a team player, Eraserhead. And while I don't doubt your ability, some criminals may try to slip past. So we are sending a task force. Aizawa shrugged. Do as you wish. This also means coming with us. The hero sighed even heavier than before. So, this is the one, Jurin. Danny had been brought to the workshop just as promised. It wasn't that long of a ride, but by the time they reached the master's little abode, it was already nighttime. There, before the teen was standing a strange old man. The master reminded him of a gremlin, Danny decided. Not much from the appearance, as there was nothing unusual about a short person with long white beard. Well, those wielding glasses appeared very goofy. It was mostly because of that energetic aura of a man eager to mingle with something that could potentially explode into their face. It reminded the teen of his neglectful parents somewhat. Perhaps he would be saying the same thing about every engineer happy with their jobs. Who knows? They were excitable about what they did, after all. The workshop was just as the name would imply, and it suited the teens' every expectation. That city was full of empty and disused locations, the half-ghost pointed out to his silent amusement. If some hero was to decide and raid every vacant warehouse in Musutafu, then the crime world would be doomed. The scale at which the work was conducted was impressive, and Phantom saw several workers toiling over more support items. All of those were handmade, and thus appeared ghastly to look at. Black market had its downsides. Danny's eyes kept darting from one weird invention to another, piled together without any visible order. The heavy odors of metal and oil kept assaulting his senses. Yeah, the newest rising star, Jurin said sarcastically. Kid, meet Tinkerer. Sup. Danny raised his hand in a greeting. HM. What a peculiar one. Tinkerer approached the teen, putting on the goggles and jumping off his improvised work desk. Why are you glowing? He asked a blunt question. I use the energy my body produces. I can't tell it to stop, so the excess just comes in contact with the air, Danny explained quickly with all the diligence of an excellent student. Your voice also echoes, Jiren pointed out, leaning against the wall. He hadn't noticed this before for some reason. Yeah, same stuff. Sound waves meet the energy particles and get a bit wonky. Oh my, how intriguing, Tinkerer said. So, what exactly do you want, kid? Any ideas? Yes, I actually brought a list. Danny handed the man a sheet of paper. Jiren wondered where he had been keeping it. Tinkerer snatched the list and quickly skimmed over it. Confused, he looked up at the teen. Those are just random details, kid. Like, a gas converter. Why do you even need it? Any model will do, said Danny and shrugged. It's easy to repurpose, really. I watched my parents make that thing, and was tasked to change them from time to time, or our house would have been blown up sky high. I know how it is made. Tinkerer glanced at Jiren. So you came to buy only the details, eh? The kid is not exactly swimming in money, the broker explained. I know your services are not cheap. True, a master's work should be paid handsomely. A greedy gleam appeared in the engineer's eyes. Maybe the kid wants to buy something from the newest stash. Newest stash. Danny tilted his head. Yeah, Detnerat is gonna be pissed, but it's all worth it. You actually robbed them? Jiren asked in shock. You imbecile. The outburst stunned both the teen and the master. They always come for their property, you buffoon. Relax. You think I am actually so dumb that I kept the trackers on? Tinkerer huffed. Detnerat has eyes and ears everywhere in the black market. Jiren grumbled. They trade here themselves, they very much like their monopoly, and they won't need trackers to hunt you down. Danny observed the exchange with big interest. While he wouldn't mind purchasing some legit tool from a legit company, the trackers were something to be wary of, even if the master claimed to have removed them. And making a corporation angry with him was the last thing Danny wanted. So, he stood up and coughed. Listen, guys, you can bicker until your throats dry up, but I need my details. Do you have anything of what I wrote down? We got it all, kid. Hey, runts, go fetch me everything from that list. A worker approached the master, took the list and nodded. Danny sat on a random chair, one of several that were scattered around. He was disinterested in the others' conversation. It was all about their business deals that didn't concern him. Instead, the teen watched the box meant for him being filled with more and more details he could recognize. It wasn't that difficult to know the ingredients for making what he wanted. Danny knew that his parents purchased relatively little, instead opting to salvage broken stuff from the junkyards. So if they used trash to create breakthrough machines, so could he replicate their success? Probably. Danny certainly hoped so, or all of that would be for nothing. From his thoughts he was snapped by the same old man who called him out. Say, kid, Tinkerer said, are you going to change this stupid costume? I can arrange that, too. Danny contemplated that for a moment. I could always add a cape, he joked. No mask though. I tossed the previous one into a garbage. Don't you dare. Capes are for narcissistic morons and those whose quirk relies on them. Otherwise it is a death trap waiting to spring. Danny actually hadn't seen many heroes or villains around their use any capes. Come to think of it, there weren't any ghostly adversaries of his that wore capes, except maybe Danny's main foe. While Plasmius's powers did not rely on a cape, he most certainly was a narcissistic Fruit Loop. There was also Danny himself, or rather, what he was fated to become at some point. But since that man was an amalgamation of Danny's and Vlad's ghost parts, he probably took after the latter when it came to bloated self-esteem. It wouldn't stop that terrible fate from haunting his dreams in the future, but it was an amusing thing to consider. The half-ghost leaned back in his chair. No, I don't think changing the entire costume is a priority for me. I'm a bit attached to this one, both literally and figuratively. The suit was but an ectoplasmic puddle that assumed the shape, is all. That's why built-in upgrades were out of question. He even made a logo for himself, Jiren laughed. Now that's cute. Danny chose not to comment on that sensitive part. It was too personal for him. The teen just rewarded the broker with a minor glare, before looking at the box with supplies that was placed on the desk. Tinkerer started examining the contents and checking with the list. Once again the teen was surprised by the diligence of the local societal lows. Let's see here, yep, everything seems to be in order. Now it is your turn, kid. That will cost you 50,000. By the teen's face it was easy to guess how crestfallen he must have been feeling. That purchase left the teen with nothing. While he had hoped for a nice dinner, knowing that it was best not to argue for a better price, Danny mutely paid up. Jiren cackled at seeing the boy so painfully spending his winnings. Cheer up, kid, the broker patted Danny on the back. It is a one-time purchase. There will be more money where these came from, he said and tapped on the pile of yen bills. I suggest you find a way to transport all this stuff. I don't suppose you sell gift wrappers. I'd like it to be blue, Danny sarcastically asked Tinkerer. No can do, sorry, boyo. Boss, one of the workers shouted. This one had run out of some adjacent room without taking off the headphones. We've got trouble. Let me guess, Jiren smirked coldly. You got found out. What he says. There is a task force moving our way. They will be here soon. Damn it all, Tinkerer yelled. Just as we practiced, everyone, go. The entire workshop was consumed by a unique form of organized chaos. Everything that wasn't nailed to the ground was quickly moved somewhere, and Danny had no idea where they were going to hide their items and details. He had no time to think about it. If he was caught by the police, it all would be over. The teen glanced to his side and saw that Jiren was already gone. Of course, you don't make it high in the underworld without an innate ability to skedaddle at the first sign of trouble. Danny scooped the box in his hands and closed it by using some sticky ectoplasmic goo his finger released. Turning invisible alongside the loudly rattling box, the teen ran towards a wall and phased through it. He softly landed outside and started to run away from the occupied warehouse. Danny was about to take flight, but then felt something hitting him on the back. Out of shock, the teen fell forward, the box falling out of his hands. He himself dropped invisibility, losing the required concentration. Spinning around on his back, Danny regretted having discarded the sleeping mask. For now he was faced with the same tired hero from a week ago. Danny felt a lump in his throat, and the man was the first to speak. You are making too much noise, he answered the question that was hanging in the air. Eraserhead was not happy confronting a child, especially the one who looked so shocked and scared. But that was a criminal like all others. Once Danny regained his confidence, and the initial feelings were replaced by the determination to get the hell out of there, the man's last reservations were gone. He could see that the boy searched for an opening. Can I get up? Danny asked. No. The hero activated his erasure quirk, his eyes starting to glow with crimson color. The next split second he launched the ends of his scarf right at him. Luckily, it wasn't Danny's first time seeing the man. The teen dodged the attacks with an impressive speed. But his attention was also focused on the box with supplies, which the man did notice. Then, Danny decided to risk it. Maybe it could work, and fired a shot right from his own green eyes. He didn't aim for the hero's head, but a little to the side. So, the man could not cancel his power. The sudden display of power presented just enough of a 1-second shock for the teen to act. Danny lunged for the box, but Aizawa snapped out of it quickly enough to throw his scarf at it. The boy could dodge the strikes. His prized possession could not. Eraserhead pulled the box towards himself, allowing himself to blink. The quirk was useless here anyhow. Danny stood where he used to, his face exasperated. Come on, man. I worked hard to get this stuff. I swear I wasn't planning anything bad with it. You will tell this before the court. Danny could hear the police cars approaching. So that guy was a vanguard attacker. Look, there are others there, and they are running away with even more goods. I don't want to fight you, you don't want them to escape, so how about we just go on our ways? Or I tie you up and then go after the others. Not happening, Danny responded firmly. He wasn't leaving without the supplies he sacrificed so much for. At least tell the police. Why are you so adamant that I catch them? You came after them, right? It will be a waste capturing just me. Eraserhead narrowed his eyes, pressing a button on his earpiece. Danny did not move while he was distracted, if only for a moment. The boy was genuinely angry with others for ditching him like that, as well as getting him into that mess. Remove trackers, his ass. Danny felt glad that he didn't buy any of the stolen properties, then. And if the police saw the boy's face, then he would go down with those bastards. After Eraserhead informed the cops, he turned his attention to the boy in front of him. As many had pointed out before, it was a very low-grade suit he was wearing. The visibly malnourished boy also didn't strike him as a villain. Petty thief. Yes, villain capable of something worse. Not really. The hero sighed. Listen, kid. Just surrender. The police will be more lenient this way. How do I know? I don't need any trouble. You should have thought about it before doing all that. Do you want the wanted posters with your face in every department? If it really is something minor, then you have nothing to worry about. On one hand, Eraserhead was right. Danny's box was filled with very inconspicuous and random stuff, not anything illegal. But on the other, if they caught Jiren, he would tell everything about the pit fights too, which would worsen his chances significantly. Danny's face was already seen. It was just like before, when he was always at the wrong place at the wrong time. The small list of presumed offenses was enough to label him as a criminal back home. That man was giving Danny a chance to explain himself. And honestly, the teen would be a fool not to use that opportunity. At least that way there was a chance, there was also an opportunity to bolt out if something happened. He could try and kill that hero, but no way in hell was he going to do that. Alright, the teen raised his hands, seeing a couple of police cars pull up. I surrender. His peaceful life didn't last for long. The hours after the detainment were a nerve wreck for each side involved. Danny himself felt unnerved in the prison cell. He had been detained and thrown behind bars only once in his afterlife, and that was after he angered a trigger-happy warden. This time, however, it was different in several aspects. For one, this was not a crazed, power-obsessed ghost with no actual legal authority. This was a legitimate police department serving the state it was located in. So, their authority had an extensive reach. The other differing aspect was how he actually wasn't tied down to his cell. They thought his only power was invisibility, so nobody bothered to take extra measures to hold him. The metaphor of being the prisoner of one's own mind was a real thing, it seemed. Danny just hoped that the locals would value his desire to cooperate, and that they would return the stuff he bought. Come to think of it, what was there to stop him from buying the details from a legit salesman? When such thought occurred, the teen slapped himself across the face. Damn that Jurin, he knew how to get a client. Nobody was caught except for him, which made the teen all the more furious on the inside. That's what one would get for playing the game without knowing its rules. He was tricked, and the teen was dead set on getting back at them after he got out. Maybe a solid punch to knock out the remaining teeth of that double-crossing man. But for now, Danny could only hope for the best. His ghost form needed to be sustained, and his fuel tank was going to run dry at some point. And if he suddenly turned human, then there would be no hiding at all. The situation sucked. Until then he had to settle everything. He also felt hungry and tired. Maybe he could get some food while he was at it. While the half-ghost was trapped in the conundrum of his thoughts, the police themselves had been busy. While the trail was hot, they tried to pursue the thieves, but to no avail. The criminals had been using their quirks to hide from pursuit, probably. They had been elusive up to that point. It wasn't any surprise they escaped that time, too. The only clue they had left was the detained boy with a box of random junk. From what he said and what he did, it was deduced that he wasn't just a simple bystander, but someone who knew something about the criminals. Tsukachi decided to do some digging prior to the interrogation. They had taken the photo of the adolescent, as well as his fingerprints, and the detective was glad that the detainee did not resist. The police needed to hold a non-stop watch, because the boy could turn invisible and slip past whenever he wanted. That's why he was held in a glass cell. By searching in the database, the detective hoped to come across a match. Unfortunately for him, neither the photo nor the fingerprint could not be traced on the list, which could only mean that the kid was never registered in Japan. No passport, no birth certificate, no mention in the quirk registry. After this, looking at the mugshot where the obviously European-looking boy was sticking out his tongue, Tsukachi started to wonder if he was not a local. His Japanese was perfect, however, so he must have had some connection to the country. Maybe some of his relatives lived here, but to find those he first needed the boy's name. Tsukachi looked at the report. His name was Daniel, that much the boy already divulged. But other than that, nothing. The kid was a small fry. He would find no information about him on the global list of criminals either. The detective tried to use other, foreign data storages, but the result was similar no matter where he went. American, Australian, Canadian, they all were void on any information on the kid. It was almost like he didn't exist. That case was growing more interesting. The detective met the following morning with heavy bags under his eyes. In the middle of the night, Tsukachi was told that the police was going to come from two ends. The other team was meant to be on the criminal's tail. He was tasked with cracking the mystery behind the strange boy in their captivity in hopes of him knowing something. So, the first thing in the morning, after drinking a cup of coffee, the detective went to interrogate the suspect, envying the erasure hero who was going at the criminals from his end. Aizawa's quirk was useless against the teen, so it was only natural. Tsukachi, however, could work with what he had. The boy had been transported to the special interrogation room, but the detective had his gun on him just in case. That boy could shoot lasers. Tsukachi wasn't sure if the transparent barrier between them could hold. They couldn't assess the damage he could cause. When the man entered the room on his side, he could see the glowing teenager munching on a protein bar. Danny glanced to the detective and gulped the treat down, smirking. "Morning," he called out cheerfully. "Is this the part where you interrogate me?" "Yes." Tsukachi sat on a chair in front of the glass. "Where did you get the bar?" "A guard gave it." "You are lying," the detective pointed out. "Don't try to pull that on me." "What? You are a lie detector with legs." "Precisely," Tsukachi smirked. "So, mind telling me the truth?" Danny sighed. "Fine. I went for a walk, picked up my wallet and bought it from the vending machine. I returned everything afterwards. What do you mean, you went for a walk? It's just as I said, man. You guys never bothered to bring in any food, and I am a growing kid, so I did everything myself. The food is not our responsibility, kid. It's not a prison, you are in a police department, and you somehow left your locked cell. Can we move on? Danny rolled his eyes and leaned against the wall. I came back, didn't I? I don't know what made you think that leaving your cell is allowed under any circumstances. If anything, this only shows how cooperative I am. Phantom smirked. I mean, I am here only because I want to. I could have walked out of the front door and you wouldn't have noticed me until it was too late. Yet, we are talking. You even got your confiscated goods back. Well, then, why did you surrender and why didn't you leave? I just don't want any trouble. For someone taking strolls where you aren't supposed to, you are awfully lawful when needed. Hey, I mean it. I just wanted to eat. And I even paid to the soulless machine in the corridor. We just misunderstood each other from the start, that's all. Alright, hit me with your version of the event. Phantom realized that he needed to be careful with what he said. That man seemed to be very capable of noticing lies. This place is filled with powerful people. I just wanted to be safe and get better at using my powers. But I am just a part-time worker at a second-rate grocery store. I had no money for anything proper, so all you found were details. There was also stuff to repair the stuff back home. But why go to the black market? I just got swindled by the wrong people, Danny sighed, banging his head on the glass. I'm such a dumbass. You were about to make an illegal upgrade, weren't you? The man could see the green eyes staring at him from under the stark white locks. Honestly, I am not sure. I am still an amateur hoping to recreate something from my parents' stash. I don't recall there being an article preventing an attempt. I haven't broken anything. Yet you are clearly capable of that. Had it not been for your financial situation. That's not enough of a reason to put me in jail, officer. An attempt to murder, yes. This, no. Since you mentioned your parents, do they know what you are doing? No, they don't. And they couldn't care less. The bastards kicked me out of our house just because I don't suit their expectations. Right? Who needs a freak like me? That was something Tsukachi wasn't prepared for. That explained the boy's behavior a lot. And placing trust in the unsavory characters could be the result of desperation. Young Daniel didn't appear as a law-breaking type. But Tsukachi knew better than most how deceiving appearances could be. It's his words and actions that mattered. Yet, something appeared strange. Why do you call yourself a freak? It's what they said last time we met. I omitted the rest. Don't want extra obscenities in your report. Then, what made them say such things to their son? Do they have quirks? Nope, Danny answered, glad that the detective let the teen interpret everything his way. He figured that as long as it wasn't a lie, the man would spot no inconsistencies. They have an especially strong hatred towards everything out of norm. Well, their standards of norm. When they learned about me, well, it got heated. Tsukachi heard of such people. Sometimes being quirkless created a special brand of bigotry and hate. The kid got it rough. Where are you from, kid? Could you stop calling me that? Every person around does. I have a name, Phantom complained. Sorry, Danny. Could you answer? Amity Park. It is a small town in America. You sure are far away from home. Does it matter? I don't have any proper citizenship, not even a birth certificate. I might as well have been born here. Tsukachi's look became thoughtful. That complicated the matters a lot. Could his parents deny him even that right of any human being? That would explain the boy's absence from every registry in the world. He knew for a fact that Danny was not lying. The detective's quirk allowed him to recognize the deceit. Were your parents at fault? The passport I got with them won't convince anyone with proper knowledge of fakes. The detective sighed. He supposed he shouldn't go hard on the boy in that regard. They couldn't deport him to the country he had no citizenship of. Neither did he want to do that to a boy. Are you all by yourself? Yeah, I managed to make my place homey, though, the teen said with a proud expression. It's not like your child services will provide for a guy like me. They will only create extra hustle. You won't know without looking into it. I have been wondering, what is that you are wearing? A hazmat. I can see that. Still, this isn't something children dress into. Furthermore, this, coupled with an insignia on your chest, points towards vigilantism. Please, explain this part to me. Danny's lips thinned. I used to beat up some unsavory people back in America, yes. Vigilantism is a crime no matter where you go, Danny. Still not your problem as long as it doesn't happen in Japan, right? Look, pal, it was different in my hometown. Too small for people to notice or care. We didn't have any heroes and the police couldn't do anything. I just had to do something. Still not a single bit of gratitude, but I am used to it. The people must have known that you are acting without a license and were afraid of an amateur, Tsukachi concluded. Danny couldn't blame the man for arriving to a false understanding. The given prerequisites could yield no other result. That beats being assaulted at every corner, Danny answered. No matter how you look at it, coming and beating a murderer does not absolve you of anything, I understand that. But I like the thought that I helped the people in my own way. They certainly didn't share your sentiment. Is that why you left your hometown? Well, my parents kicking me out was the catalyst, yes. But I came to realize that after a while the criminals decided that I was a challenge to overcome. They aimed for me above everything else. So, by moving where none of them will reach me, I help both myself and those people. I promise, they shouldn't be a problem while I am here. Tsukachi started thinking. The boy was sincere in what he was saying, but his confidence was not exactly truthful. He could not really vouch for those criminals. That story had some white spots, and the boy was obviously withholding something. The world was enormous, and heroes could not possibly cover every corner due to their limited numbers. All Might defeated the worst of the worst, crippling the crime world for decades, but it didn't mean that the bandits would not try and cause chaos somewhere beyond his reach. So that part seemed consistent with the rest of the boy's story. But surely the crime won't completely stop there. Did you consider it? Yeah, I know. I just hope that I manage to make things easier for others. Maybe someone can take over and keep a resemblance of order, especially since the government finally took notice. Even if I hate their methods and the people doing all that, maybe they have something I don't. And that would be, I probably wasn't hard enough on them. After most of our fights, the criminals were relatively unscathed. The government will probably butcher them. Those people in white disgust me, but they will be feared. Unlike me, I only scare regular people for some reason. You don't look that scary. Yeah. Mock the ghost child more. Danny crossed his hands. Tsukachi's sweat dropped. It was meant to be a compliment. Read the room, man. I thought it was your SH tick, the teen sighed. My point is, people I fought for feared me. People I didn't care for did. My enemies, not so much. That's probably why the criminals kept coming back and depriving me of proper sleep. But the fear of actual action against their livelihood may stop at least some of them. The boy was probably not systematic about his actions, the detective thought to himself. Contrary to what many vigilantes believed, it wasn't enough to simply dump a criminal at the doorstep of a police department. That's just not how things functioned. In truth, Phantom's adversaries were of ghostly nature, obviously. No human prison could hold them, neither was the half-ghost going to play the classic jury-judge-executioner game. He chose to be simple. The villain was beaten off to the ghost zone with them. But it wasn't really a punishment, was it? They were simply sent back home, free to lick their wounds and prepare their next attack in peace. Danny didn't exactly have a choice for that matter. No prison in the human world existed to keep ghosts detained. Walker the ghost warden was a psycho who could not be trusted to keep order. By sending ghosts back, Danny at least had a short break. It was the best compromise, given the situation. If only Fentons actually had brains not to keep that stupid portal open 24/7 for their research. Listen, Danny, Tsukachi sighed. You are right. What you did in America is the American problem. And you also seem sincere in what you are saying. Let's do it like this. Your offense is minor, that's correct. So, if you cooperate and help us in our investigation, I think you will be able to go. The teen's face brightened. Okay, but cooperate how? You met with the seller, right? Could you give a description of what he looked like? The detective saw that the boy's smirk became more malicious. He was clearly going to enjoy selling out the criminal as an act of retribution. Old, seemingly frail, has that long white beard. He is also short and reminds me of a little goblin. What's with those big ears and glasses? Danny put his palms behind the ears to parody the size. Goes by the name Tinkerer. Did you get a chance to see his quirk? I didn't. Danny, vengeful he might have been at that moment, still remembered that Jiren had dirt on him in the form of pit fights. So, the teen chose to omit him from the tale. Still, he was trying to remember everyone else he met in that hideout. Ghosts were capable of holding a grudge for a long while, and that trait manifested itself within Phantom, too, even despite the fact that he was only a half-breed. As the teen finished his description and the guy behind the one-way glass nearby stopped typing, Tsukachi nodded in satisfaction. They now had the description of how the criminals looked like, and now the police had something to actually go by. He would relay the information to the higher-ups. Thank you for your cooperation, Danny. Am I free to go now? Yes, but there are things we need to go through with first. To start with, you need some proper registration. Of course, you aren't going to become a citizen, but the government needs to know about your quirk. This is not up for debate, Tsukachi said sternly, seeing that the teen was about to object. The law applies to everyone. I think we will just write it down in your case file. It can be passed on further. Any questions? None so far. Nobody else would see it, right? Danny, Tsukachi sighed. I understand that after your parents' reception you must be feeling reluctant. but I promise nothing will happen to you afterwards. He could see the distrust in the boy's eyes, but he probably realized that arguing would get him nowhere. Truth be told, he was correct to some extent, but mostly it was just tiredness of it all. Danny had been used to people around being too dumb to get so deep inside the hidden stash of knowledge. He still could just blame his every power on a quirk, that's all. I wish I could know if you are being truthful. The teen crossed his hands. Fine, I'll register. The detective gave a small smile. That's good. Before we release you, there is also the matter of the details you bought. I am afraid we will still have to confiscate the black market goods, both as a part of a protocol and a possible clue to where the criminals might be. Danny's eyes widened. You heartless monsters, he exclaimed, maybe too dramatically. I spent my last pennies on those. I am sorry, but I am already making enough compromises, Danny. I need your word that you won't try to take them. I have already observed that you can be a natural thief if need be. I bought that bar. You know what I mean? The detective responded tiredly. Think of it as a lesson not to trust shady traders. Danny, I am willing to compromise, but there are limits. So, you won't attempt anything stupid like stealing the clues back. Phantom sighed. Fine, I promise. He gave a scout's honor sign. Sensing the genuine intent, the detective nodded once more. Then I think we can release you now. On cue, the transparent door finally opened. The half-ghost exited his cell, stretching his muscles. The sweet taste of freedom, he mumbled, before sniffing the air. I probably need a shower, too. The documents come first, the detective smirked. Follow me. Phantom was right behind Tsukachi as they went towards his office. The occasional policeman kept giving them confused glances, but Danny only cheerfully waved back. The two of them quickly reached Tsukachi's office, where the teen plopped on the nearest chair. The detective sat at his desk, pulling the teen's file closer. He immediately started filling in the information about the half-ghost. Some additional information was needed, however. You never told me your last name. Do you have any? Phantom will do, I suppose. I am getting that weird feeling that you are only half-truthful. Go on, Danny. Nobody is going to attack you. I specifically released you from your cell to show my good intentions. And without your proper last name, you will get no proper documents afterwards. Perhaps what he was doing was incredibly foolish, Danny wondered, blowing his secret identity so soon. Then again, the teen saw that very few actually had any to speak of. There were few masks, and even those that were present were only a homage to the style. The government probably knew about them all. Things used to be so simple back in the day. He was a mistake of nature, so nobody would even suspect a human child to have the powers of a ghost. The absurdity of his condition was his greatest defense against being found out. His parents even had a theory that perhaps Phantom was an imprint on ectoplasm that Danny had left on the day of the accident. Without dying, they were this close to understanding, yet the stubbornness and aforementioned absurdity of the truth prevented them from doing so. Them and the world both. That world was different from his, and simply having powers was nothing endangering. Nobody had to know the whys of his abilities. Nobody had to know where he came from. Those details about his life were bound to get him extraordinary attention. And if he was thinking realistically, that was also his chance to settle down properly. The officer seemed understanding of his situation, and probably had an advice or two on how to proceed. Getting citizenship or at least some form of local documents was probably his first step. And without real identity, it was simply impossible. Maybe he should just stop worrying about that cliché comic book stuff. It tied him down too much, and he seemed to go against them at any given opportunity. And if things ever went south, he always had Wolf. Fenton, Danny responded, ignoring the still present lump in his throat. Christ, they just had to send a lie detector guy at him. Tsukachi nodded and wrote it down. Why would you call yourself Phantom, though? Still beats Inviso Bill, Danny shivered. I hate gossip. The detective choked a laugh. I may just write this down, too. Don't you dare. Why? We have a protocol, the detective laughed. All right, but why Phantom? I mean, I can be quiet, I turn invisible. Hence the hero nickname. I see. Why don't you come here and fill the quirk category? Danny got up and approached the desk. Takachi now noticed that the boy's steps were extremely light and soundless. He really was like a ghost now when he thought about it. The boy was glowing, his voice echoed, and he wasn't making a sound. He never even blinked during their conversation. Danny leaned over the man's shoulder before the detective pushed the sheet of paper towards the half-ghost and handed him a pen. Clicking thoughtfully on the tip, Danny wrote down the information, concise and hopefully sufficient. Quirk, ghost, control over ectoplasmic energy. That's not much to go by, Tsukachi commented. That's what I do, Danny shrugged. The explanation needs to be short, right? That's correct, but I have never seen anything like it. I see no connecting thread between your abilities. Lasers, invisibility. I can waste a lot of time explaining this stuff, but I don't think you are up for it, Danny shrugged. What I wrote is true. All my abilities fall under this explanation, no matter how they may appear. Very well. But expect that the Special Commission may request a demonstration of all you can do with description like that. You don't have any problems with your quirk, do you? Kids your age still might have trouble. Well, some of my limbs used to vanish all of a sudden, Danny chuckled. I have full control now, though. I'll need your contact information. Will my phone number do? I believe so. If something happens, they will call you, I think. I too will keep it in mind if we need some extra testimony. Suddenly Tsukachi's own phone rang, and the detective immediately answered it. Yes, Tsuragami-sama, he asked, as the impatient teen returned to his seat. Yes, the boy spoke. I can confirm it. He is not in tow with the criminals, so I plan to see him released. However, he can identify the criminals. We have the description of our guy as well. Yes, I'll give a detailed breakdown in my report. You can also examine the interrogation recording. I'll have Tamakawa prepare it. Thank you, Tsuragami-sama. Tsukachi hung up, a small smile crossing his features. Thanks to you, kid, I can finally go home. Do you need a lift? Not really, Danny shrugged. I can get there on my own, thank you very much. I needed some fresh air, anyway. Fix the AC, I mean it. Tsukachi got up from his seat and fetched a tan coat that had been hanging over his chair. The detective then approached the teen and patted him on the shoulder. I think this will be a great trust-building experience, Danny. Trust in what? In our law enforcement, of course. I can see that you are reluctant to place your faith into us. And a jolly ride in a car is totally gonna fix it all, Danny remarked sarcastically. Why do you care? Tsukachi smiled. Because it is my job to make sure that the citizens are safe. Building confidence in the police force is one of the key factors for that. At least tell me which way your home is. In the north, Yashitsune district. Huh, I don't live that far myself. This settles it. You are coming with me, Danny. That man sure was assertive. Danny could give him that much. Still, Tsukachi passed the evaluation and managed to earn the teen's sympathy. After all, he was the first person around to learn anything of value about the half-ghost, without using that information to throw the teen behind bars or doing something even worse. Danny doubted that there was any threat coming from the detective. Certainly none in the physical department, for his quirk was not going to save him from turning into an icicle. And since he was just let go, it probably wasn't worth it worrying about everything every single minute. Sighing, the teen smiled and got up from his seat. You aren't gonna fall asleep on me, are you, old man? Who are you calling old? Tsukachi asked with indignation in his voice. I am 36, still gonna outlive ya. As the two were driving down the road, the teen had a curious thought in his mind. It had actually been ages since he last properly sat in a car, the ride inside a van with Jiren notwithstanding. His flight ability rendered any sort of transport redundant, and yet he was still always late despite having the superior option. However, this car ride was also especially uneventful by Danny's standards. The good policeman was taking him home, abiding by every rule a driver should follow, at an adequate speed and without extra tossing around. All of the aforementioned details used to be an inseparable part of travels when Jack Fenton was holding the wheel. The teen was bored, and there was nothing he could do but sit and wait until the ride was over. Tsukachi had other plans, however, and whether or not this was an inconspicuous attempt to continue the interrogation, only the detective himself knew. The detective kicked off the conversation, and Danny gave in. Despite learning a lot about the teen, it still had been only to aid the investigation. But Tsukachi wanted to know more, not out of his civic duty, but because the boy earned his sympathy, and the right to be the subject of the man's concern. The boy was alone, underage, and very far from home. All those factors combined were a dangerous cocktail that could lead down a very perilous path to the life of crime. From the conversations with him, Tsukachi could see that the boy wasn't malicious at all. He could do with less sarcasm, but everyone had their questionable traits. The teen actually found a job instead of taking the easy path of theft, and never lied once after willingly surrendering to the police. With his abilities, Danny could rob whoever he wanted without any repercussions. If he wouldn't start the life of crime himself, there would be people and circumstances to push him. He already came in contact with the criminals, and even bought something from them. It was merely a start. The boy was also a vigilante, and it wasn't a compliment, because to Tsukachi, the line between them and villains was nigh non-existent. He broke the law, and only his affiliation with a foreign state prevented the officer from making a dutiful arrest. Well, maybe not entirely. Had it been some random man, he probably wouldn't have been as lenient. Danny was, once again, just a kid. It was always more difficult with kids. They could commit heinous things, and yet it always felt like it wasn't their fault in the end. It was a difficult feeling to shake off. Obviously, Danny never reached such extremes, to his knowledge at least. Hence the leniency on the officer's behalf. Tsukachi wished he could do something to help the teen's situation, but not many things came to mind. If there was someone willing to become his guardian, it could solve a lot of problems, so it was the most ideal option. The detective asked the teen about this, receiving a confused stare. Danny looked at him with his cold green eyes, and he obviously never thought of that before. The idea was outlandish, to say the least. Phantom reminded the officer that he was just a foreign kid with no record or acquaintances. Furthermore, he was a kid with very destructive powers. The chances of someone actually deciding to bring him under their roof were slim. Tsukachi had no choice but to agree with what Danny was saying. Still, the half-ghost admitted that he had nothing against this, and the officer noticed how embarrassed the teen was when saying it. It appeared that Danny didn't want to be a bother for anyone. The boy's doubts notwithstanding, Tsukachi had little reasons to dismiss the plan just like this. He would have to give it more thought. "Hey, old man," Danny snapped the detective out of his thoughts. Tsukachi grumbled on the inside, but did not respond. The teen got the message immediately. "Tsukachi-san." "Yes, Danny." The man smirked. "The car has been crying about empty tank for good 5 minutes already. Alright, I guess we can stop by a place. We probably need our tanks filled, too. We better. My wallet has cartoonish spiderwebs inside, though. Don't worry, it's on me." Their car pulled up towards a gas station. Several minutes later the tank was filled to the brim, and the detective stopped the transport nearby. He and Danny went towards the station cafe in hopes of snagging a bite of anything worthy of being called breakfast. The people gave them confused glances, and the teen honestly regretted that he couldn't just turn into his human form. Not in front of the extra audience. Danny and the detective sat at a table and enjoyed some coffee, with the latter now looking like a decent human being, not the one deprived of sleep. Of that Tsukachi was subtly informed by his adolescent companion. The detective was about to retort, but then he saw some commotion out of the window. The breakfast was going to be cut short. "Stay here, Danny," Tsukachi ordered. "What do you?" The teen looked where the officer was staring. Outside, on the other side of the road, there was a robbery taking place. An attack on a jewelry store was not something new to neither the officer nor the vigilante teenage hero. Whatever was happening inside, a fiery explosion blew out the windows of the shops, and seconds later the shockwave made the glass of the gas station tremble. Danny's look turned dead serious upon witnessing the robbery in process. Yet, he remained calm as the crowd inside the station started running outside, screaming and yelling. "I can help, Tsukachi," Danny called over the noise of the crowd. "No, you can't," Tsukachi responded, harshly and firmly. There was no time for arguing. "You are not authorized to act, Danny. You will only make it worse for yourself. So you stay here, got it?" The teen begrudgingly nodded and cursed. "I hope you know what you are doing, old man. Remember what I said about trust. Then trust me on this, Danny." With that being said, Tsukachi ran outside, reaching for the gun on his belt. The detective also took the radio and contacted the policeman. He knew that he had no power to handle everything on his own if the crime was committed by people with stronger quirks. His own was not made for fighting. Tsukachi needed to assess the danger and hold them off for as long as he could. There were civilians inside. Running up to the store doors, the man peeked inside, looking through the glass windows. There were 3 criminals in total, 2 men and 1 woman. No distinguishable features to hint at what abilities they possessed. That complicated the matter. Tsukachi also spotted the hostages. One of the criminals was near the counter and the cashier. Another was standing above 4 crouched bystanders. The third was busy hoarding the jewelry inside a bag. The former 2 were dangerous, they were close to the hostages. The room was made in a way that all the glass cases were forming a square without one of the sides. This limited the options for a maneuver, but also gave a lot of cover for a man with a gun. Tsukachi needed a plan. Maybe he should wait until the reinforcements arrived. He alone couldn't act quick enough. But then the criminals would have the time to escape. They didn't expect a policeman to arrive so soon, so for now he had the advantage of surprise. Taking out the one with the hostages was the most logical option. The cashier had a chance to escape during the commotion. Tsukachi took a breath before barging inside the store. "Freeze," the officer demanded, before firing a warning shot. The plan worked, and the cashier managed to press a small button for the police. Using the door behind her, she decided to make a run for it. "Hey, get back here," the closest bandit yelled, before a second shot sounded near him. "Eyes on me," Tsukachi said seriously. "Wait, are you alone here? A single policeman?" The woman near the captives laughed. "You think you can beat us?" "Maybe," responded the detective. "I may have a situational quirk, but I also doubt you are bulletproof." The detective tried to keep his eyes on all the criminals in the room, waiting for them to make a move. The criminals didn't have any firearms of their own, which put him in a certain advantage. However, there was no telling what they could pull off. Tsukachi wished for a hero to come as quick as possible. He noticed the jewelry collecting villain doing something with a locket. A second later, a sparkling ruby was taken out. Unexpectedly, all that man did was to toss it away, between the policeman and the female robber. She smirked and then raised her palm. At the last second, Tsukachi jumped behind a marble column as the jewel exploded in a myriad of crystal-sharp structures. She could make precious stones grow in size, a fitting quirk for a place of crime. "Where do you think you are going?" Another criminal jumped over the counter and started to quickly encroach on Tsukachi's position. The policeman peeked over the corner of his column and fired a shot. The lady blocked the first several shots with her crystals, and upon the impact they shattered like glass. The policeman fired another bullet, but the crystals were there once more. No, that wouldn't do. The criminal meanwhile continued to get close to him. Meanwhile, he could hear the footsteps behind him. While he was trying to cover the left part of the shop, the middle was blocked off by the crystals. The right part, however, was taken by the third bandit. They were trying to surround him. The gun in Tsukachi's hands only had half of its initial magazine, and just his luck that he never thought to bring more on the ride home. Taking out the lady was not an option, so that left two others. He could see that the one on the left made his palms turn into blades. This was risky, but staying in one place was a death sentence. Tsukachi exited his cover and ran right at the blade man. Without him expecting this, the man's swings were sloppy. The officer dodged the attack, ending up right behind him. Tsukachi fired his gun at the man's shoulder. The bullet hit. The criminal yelled in pain and stumbled forward. The momentary triumph was cut short by a crystal pillar. The officer only narrowly avoided the hit. The sharp end cut his forehead as he tried to jump back. But then the pillar grew another protrusion on its size, and only by miracle it wasn't pointy enough to pierce the man's head. Instead, it hit him with astonishing force and sent him on the ground. Tsukachi touched his pained face and saw his palm covered in blood. This didn't look good. The shot criminal growled and turned around, his blades glistening brightly. The crystals separating them vanished as the woman let her accomplice finish it. "You will pay for that," he yelled, lunging for the downed officer. Tsukachi closed his eyes in preparation for the impact. Only it never came. "What the?" The officer opened his eyes, only to see that the man's hands were stuck in the air, as if they hit something invisible. The man's confusion did not last long, for soon he heard the boyish laughter he had been hearing that entire morning. The following second, the glowing silhouette of the half-ghost child emerged out of thin air. Danny was holding the blade hands with his own gloved palms. "You are not really good at this trust-building stuff, are ya, old man?" he asked, his hands lightly buckling under the criminal's force. "Danny," Tsukachi breathed out. "I told you to stay out of this." Phantom looked at the bandit in front of him, before smirking. With a push he stopped the man's swing completely, following it with but a single click of his finger aimed at the man's gut. It immediately launched the criminal into the opposite wall. Tsukachi stared at this with even further shock. Super strength, too. That amount of abilities was simply incomprehensible. Danny didn't notice the gaze as he looked at his torn clothes and bleeding palms. "That's what he got for doing stupid stuff like that. Either I go back to the naughty corner or you die, pal. Both options suck, so let's stick with the less awful one." Danny gave a smirk, before turning to the crystal lady. "Hey, ma'am, what even is the point of a robbery if you can replicate this stuff?" "It's nothing but cheap glass, brat," the woman said, before letting the crystals attack the boy like a swarm of tentacles. Danny was going to meet the attack head-on. The officer saw how the boy's body became somewhat see-through, akin to a reflection in the water. Instead of the crystals, the boy aimed at the one controlling them. Pushing himself forward, Phantom propelled himself towards the crystal lady. The crimson spikes pierced him in a myriad of spots, without leaving a scratch. At the last second, the intangibility the teen held vanished, before he hit the side of the woman's head. The teen floated on spot and landed on the ground. The woman didn't have a chance to get up. Around her legs and hands ice cuffs closed their grip. She had been moving her arms to control the crystals. Danny hoped to stop her by immobilizing. The criminal that had been laying low so far jumped from under the counter, and Danny could see him take a deep breath. The boy could not run. The terrified hostages were right near him. The man opened his mouth and a burst of flames flew their way, to be met with a glowing green dome, unseen under the small inferno. Danny grinned, seeing how well the energy shield was holding up. He gave the captives a thumbs up, his mind going over to Tsukachi. The man was still on the ground at the opposite end of the store. He must have been alright. The second the fire torrent stopped coming, Danny also removed the shield and faced the flamethrower man. Smirking, the teen swiped his pointing finger and the criminal was tossed into the stone column, then into the wall, and finally right outside and through the window, where Danny could see the police and a couple of costumed people, too. Sheesh, what a crowd, Danny thought and went over to Tsukachi, jumping over the glass cases once more. You alright, Tsukachi-san? He asked. Yeah, the detective got up, still clutching his forehead. I'm hearing the sirens outside. Yep, your friends came over. They got to have an ambulance. They'll patch you up. Danny outstretched his hand. Tsukachi was about to take it when he saw something that shocked him even more. Your palm. It was completely healed from the inflicted cuts. Danny looked at it and smiled sheepishly. Oh, I just heal very quickly. Now come on, you guys, it should be safe outside. He told the hostages, go out slowly with your raised hands. The police may be twitchy and take you for criminals if you aren't careful. The boy sounded like he spoke from experience. Tsukachi didn't have the time to think about it. The pain was killing those thoughts as they were spawned. The detective took the boy's hand and managed to get up with his help. Tsukachi leaned on the wall, glancing to the fallen blade criminal. He couldn't be out after just one flick to the stomach, could he? And just as he thought, the grunting criminal got up, coughing blood. Danny's strength really must have been too much for a normal human. The teen sighed upon seeing the criminal's attempts. You really shouldn't push yourself. The teen tried to sound sympathetic. I ain't going down not because of some random whelp. To be honest, you didn't stand a chance to begin with, Danny shrugged. The sympathy was thrown out of the window quicker than expected. I did a number on you, too, Tsukachi offered weakly, before pointing a gun at him. Surrender now. I am fully authorized to aim higher than the last time. The blade man thought about it for several seconds before raising his hands in surrender. Several minutes later the officer was sitting on the edge of the ambulance as the medic was wrapping a bandage around the man's forehead. By then Tsukachi had regained his ability to think without a splitting headache. Danny was sitting on a bench nearby, his green eyes focused on the police cars and the heroes. They occasionally looked at him, too. Obviously each side was waiting for Tsukachi to issue his verdict of what happened. Without it, nobody but the criminals themselves was going to be detained. And the officer sure had a lot of things to digest. He could make one conclusion from the get-go, however. That boy was a monster, not in moral sense, but in regards to what he could do. Before him sat a child with super strength, intangibility, and many more abilities no normal human being could possess. He was potentially one of the strongest people Tsukachi knew of, one that also regenerated at a rapid speed. This went beyond what Danny had described, or rather, it didn't add up in the man's mind how all of that could be compiled in such a short description. For a split second, it even made Tsukachi remember one more person with such variety of abilities. Tsukachi was initially at a loss of what he should do. From the vanished look of excitement and glee, nothing was left on Danny's face. The boy was absolutely serious now, understanding of what situation he was in. Even if the teen disobeyed him, Tsukachi was glad that he had. He wouldn't be alive otherwise. Furthermore, Danny was still not running anywhere after opting to rather go to jail than to let Tsukachi die. He knew the implications, yet he still risked it all to save the one who could not have even appreciated it due to his views in the line of work. Young Fenton was truly an enigma, but the detective could see the golden heart beneath his sarcasm and terrifying power. Perhaps it was the latter that made him ostracized, and for the boy to remain ready to help everyone, it was truly a miracle. It would honestly shame Tsukachi if he punished the good-natured boy for doing the right thing, even if it was vigilantism they were talking about. Tsukachi owed him his life. To cast the boy away was to make him hate everyone he could potentially save. The detective hated to compromise on his principles like that, but he also knew that the teen was worthy of such compromise. Self-defense, Officer Tamakawa, the feline-looking policeman, asked. Tsukachi nodded. Yes, I was just taking the boy to his home when it happened right near us. What he did in the process is my responsibility. Didn't expect you to stand up for a wild card like him. You sure you want this written down like that? Yes, Tamakawa-san. Since we are no strangers and he saved my life, it falls under the self-defense category by all accounts. The officer nodded and went to join his colleagues. The crowd started to quickly dissipate with the heroes gone as well. Soon after Tamakawa left, Tsukachi was approached by the confused teenager. I heard everything, he said. You got super hearing, too. Danny hissed uncomfortably. Among other things, I didn't lie to you back then, Tsukachi-san. I know you didn't. The officer smirked briefly, before his expression became more serious. But just how much can you do? Phantom turned away from the policeman. A lot. That's not even a half. Not even a half, he says, Tsukachi whispered and sighed. Listen, Danny, we both know that what you did in there was illegal. But this is so stupid. That's the law, Daniel. And those are the laws that keep our society intact. The sudden usage of his full name made Danny tense. Tsukachi got up from the edge of the ambulance and went in direction of the gas station. Let's continue this on the road. I still have to take you home, haven't I? Can you still drive? Yes, the medic said it's nothing serious. The rest of the car ride, despite Tsukachi's recent vow, was quiet. Danny didn't want to push his luck by saying something unnecessary. He expected to hear another lecture about how everything functioned here, but Tsukachi seemed too preoccupied with the thoughts of a wholly different matter. The half-ghost himself was thinking about how absurd the local stipulations appeared. Danny couldn't simply act according to the innate desire of his spectral half without having the police go after him, and it pissed him off. He probably should have been happy, since the others were there to defeat the bad guys. That's what he wanted, right? To avoid excessive fighting and to have rest. Then why was he still jumping into this? All he needed was to stay out of the fights. And yet he started battling the criminals again, and so soon. Danny was so lost in his thoughts, in fact, that he mindlessly kept giving Tsukachi the directions to his home without any alarm bells, until they finally stopped. Utapa Street, 23. Tsukachi mumbled. Wait, this can't be right. Phantom remembered his initial plan, and cursed mentally. Looking out of the window, he could see his disused dwelling. At this point he cared little. He had already jumped the gun more times than he dared to count. Danny mumbled. It's not so bad. My quirk will save me from cold. I made an improvised generator for light. Wash myself in the nearest bathhouse. Well, thanks for the ride, I think I will be. The teen pulled the handle, but the door did not budge. It was locked. Without understanding what even was going on, he looked at Tsukachi. Old man, the door is still locked. Tsukachi took a deep sigh, slowly drumming on the wheel. He was evidently about to say something important. Listen, Danny, your case is a difficult one. I just happened to stumble upon a boy with absolutely zero records and with powers to put most pro heroes to shame. At least conceptually. Hell knows what could happen if you are let loose with what you have. But let me finish. Any rational person would report this and get naturally concerned. Someone as potentially dangerous as you should be kept under watch. I am not saying that you are willing to be dangerous to the civilians. You already showed me that you are a good kid, someone who is ready to go to jail, just to save a person he knew for such a short while. But your intentions are misplaced and you are bound to run into trouble at some point. This understanding is very harmful and has the ability to self-perpetuate, and there is no guarantee that someone else may be understanding of your intentions. If you weren't so young, I probably would have left you behind the bars. Thanks for your honesty, Danny mumbled and crossed his hands. It would be hypocritical for a man who detects lies to be untruthful. I just want you to understand, Danny, that I know this is the last time we talk, no matter how you respond in the end. Because if you stay by yourself, I think it is just a matter of time until you break one law or another. And I really don't want to see you behind the bars, because you have a great potential to do a lot of good to the world. Seeing your living conditions now, I think the last shreds of doubt in my mind are gone. In this regard and many others, I'll be fine. Believe me, I got a valuable lesson about my power at some point. Nearly lost my family the hard way that day, Danny said quietly. It always starts with compromises, I know that. On morals, on principles. But since going haywire is the nightmare that haunts me to this day, I think you guys are safe from that nasty future. The fact that you have such fears means a lot, Danny. Both good and bad implications are there. You probably have reasons to be afraid. I just don't want to harm anyone, the teen whispered. It's just not who I am. I would never harm an innocent person. You see my point now, do you, Danny? I am saying that I myself have no concrete answer, but I think there is a way to put to rest both my concern for everyone's safety and the desire to somehow repay a kid that saved my life. I think you covering for me was enough. I'd like for both of us to forget that misconduct on either side. Tsukachi chuckled and winked. I was in two minds about actually going through with this. But now, seeing your house ready to fall apart and the one you obviously settled in illegally, Danny chuckled nervously. I understand that doing this will probably be the best option. So, Danny, how would you feel staying at my place from now on? The teen needed some to process this. He simply couldn't believe his ears, for he couldn't have seen it coming. That man knew him for so little time and yet he made such generous offer. Danny was at a loss, and it took him a good minute and Tsukachi snapping his fingers in front of his face to snap back to reality. Are you sure? I don't want to be a bother, Tsukachi-san. I mean, we only just met. Remember, this isn't only because I like you. I have to admit once again that I really would like to keep an eye on you, so take my offer as you want. If you don't believe that you saving me is a good enough stimulus. So what? You gonna put the cameras and lock me up? Not that, Danny. I meant observing you as much as I could while treating you as a normal kid. You are taking me in precisely because I am not normal, noted Danny. True, but I promise that I'm not going to restrict you more than necessary. You know, the usual curfew stuff. And no breaking the laws on my watch. It's not like I will be at home a lot, with my job and all. I admit, this won't be different from my home. Is this a good thing? As long as I don't get woken up by an explosion in the basement, Danny smirked. For how long are you having me? Until I am sure that you will be alright on your own. Probably until you become an adult. For that long? Danny asked breathlessly. Are you not going to have second thoughts? I sure will, Tsukachi chuckled. But I'm willing to take the risk. For all I know, we both think of it as such, right? Well, I am trading off my ability to do whatever I want for a proper roof above my head and a chance in life. And out of all the people, my wannabe guardian is the man who detects lies, while I want to keep some things to myself. My risks sure outweigh yours. I am getting a feeling we both are trying to dissuade each other. Both of them lightly laughed at this assumption, before Danny smiled. Alright, Tsukachi-san, I'll come with you, and thank you for being willing to bear with me. Don't mention it. Let's fetch your things and move out. I don't assume you have much. The evening of that day was spent in heavy pondering. After dinner, Danny decided to go for a walk as he chose to word it in front of the detective. He was truthful. Tsukachi was simply unaware that it also involved taking off into the skies, oblivious to the boy even possessing such ability. The teen needed a place where he could be alone with his thoughts, as the previous 24 hours had deprived him of that. For granting him such opportunity on more than one occasion, Danny favored the power of levitation more than any other. That's where the teen decided to spend some time, in the skies, away from the prying eyes of the people below. The gaze of his own focused on the serene pitch-black dome above, where the moon had already taken over. No other place could give him such liberating feeling, even the place he longed to visit years ago. Space was quiet, unforgiving, wishing to push him away. Each time he tried, Danny felt uncomfortable drifting there on his own. So small, so insignificant in the consuming emptiness of the cold vacuum. It was different from the optimistic, explorative sentiment he used to hold. The sky, on the other hand, was something much more. Down below he could see the nightly city, trimmed with a myriad of lights like a Christmas tree. He could see the cars, the people, the distant sounds of commuting reached his sensitive ears. And yet, with clouds below and the moon and stars above, it was oddly peaceful. The half-ghost could ponder on what was happening with his afterlife. It was only one day, so the teen couldn't make many assumptions yet, certainly. Wonder about his future perspectives, however, that he could allow. Danny had it until the deliverman arrived with their dinner, so plenty of time. And if he wanted, as long as he came back by 10 p.m., the half-ghost could wander about even after they had food. Tsukachi had made it abundantly clear that nightly escapades, often a lead-in for an act of crime called vigilantism, were not going to be permitted. Danny wanted to complain, but he had only recently rediscovered the treasure that is a good night's rest. It was probably better that way, but the detective acted as if the teen sought out criminals on purpose. Contrary to what Tsukachi believed and knew about, the teen was reluctant to give up on something else. Danny could not just come and say that he was going to take part in an illegal fighting match. For instance, since he wasn't going to kill anyone, Danny didn't consider such form of income an atrocity against the world's values. He was merely knocking the wind out of the guys who probably deserved it. His freedom to act however he saw fit was tough to surrender, even for the benefit of having a relatively normal life. Back home the balance was not perfect, but Phantom could do what he wanted wherever and whenever, as long as Fenton was where he was supposed to be. Here the situation was flipped, for the hero could not go out and fight, while the human teenager was shown some leniency in terms of discipline. The added benefit was that Danny didn't need to hide much from Tsukachi. Only the nature of his powers and his true place of origin were going to be concealed. And doing that was relatively simple. Living with the detective was also a good launching point. The guardianship opened many doors before the half-ghost, for he no longer was akin to an illegal migrant with absolutely zero documents. He had an official place of residence and a perspective to attain citizenship. The employers would at least take their time to look at his resume now, or he would just start working full-time in the shop. Financial independence, he called it. Danny remained optimistic about his future perspectives. He was far from dumb and he probably was one of the strongest people around and growing. He would find a way to make it work. Until then, he had to play by Tsukachi's rules, at least near the man, despite his clear distaste for those. He certainly wasn't going to make it easy for the detective, though. Probably that's what Tsukachi meant by regretting the decision in the future, Danny wondered with an amused smirk. The man was really good at his job, the guess was on spot. After no short amount of Danny concocting his plans for the next few days, his phone began to ring. Taking the old and modified shell phone that was the courtesy of Fenton Works, he saw an alarm. They had promised that the delivery would take half an hour, so the teen had set an alarm clock not to be late for some sushi. Grinning, the teen looked far below, where their apartment building was. Danny opened his arms wide, before the power of levitation let go of his body. Like a child fooling around underwater in a public pool, the half-ghost made twists, spins, and turns on his way down, laughing wholeheartedly as the wind blew past his ears and made a mess out of his stark white hair. Nobody noticed the plummeting figure, invisible to a naked eye. Picking up the speed during his free fall, Danny prepared himself for landing. The roof of the apartment block was meters away and quickly approaching, and when there remained a single inch, the half-ghost stopped the fall in its tracks. The speed he had picked up translated into a powerful gust of air that blew away the stale dust. With a smirk, Danny flipped in the air and finally landed with a soft thud. He still got it right. Deciding to use doors for once, the teen entered the building. A couple of stair flights later, and Danny was near the front door of the apartment. As he waited for Tsukachi to open it, Phantom took a look around the corridor once more. It was tidy, bright due to the blaring white light bulbs, and also extremely narrow. The locals really valued what little space was given to them. Danny's clumsy nature didn't help, and he accidentally tripped a parked bicycle. Cursing, the teen picked it up and put against the wall, just as the detective opened the door. "You sure are quick. Walking is good, eating is better. Is it here yet?" asked the teen, not really hiding his enthusiasm. "Yeah, the deliveryman just left. Come in." As Danny entered the apartment proper, he went along with Tsukachi's request and left his white boots near the entrance. The man didn't want the teen to bring in any extra dirt from the street, because the detective didn't have time to clean it all up. As they went towards the kitchen, Tsukachi's look suddenly turned reprimanding as he took another look at the boy. "Danny, I asked you to change into normal clothes before you went off. Don't you realize how much you stick out?" "I do, but I have my ways. Invisibility, you know." Tsukachi didn't think that it would be healthy for the boy to remain out of sight when in public. The detective wished that the boy would socialize, and that was exactly the opposite. Furthermore, Danny was already ignoring what the man told him. Despite everything, they had known each other for a relatively short while, so why would a rowdy teenager listen to his every whim? That's what the detective thought initially, but then he saw the boy becoming awfully reserved, as if retreating into his mind again. You would think he had had enough time to put his immediate concerns to rest, but some doubts must have been plaguing the boy's mind even still. His assumptions would prove to be more correct than he had expected. Truth be told, the teen was slowly bringing himself to make an important decision. So far, he and Tsukachi hadn't had a chance to properly discuss one major problem the teen had chosen to omit. After they had returned to the home that was going to be Danny's, too, Tsukachi was eager to finally take a nap. The man was confident enough that the teen could be trusted around the house in his absence, and he wasn't wrong. Phantom hadn't tried to steal something and then run away. He had mostly spent the time in the guest room that was named his and started finding place for his belongings. Clothes in the wardrobe, his own little TV on a desk alongside with the electrician's nightmare that was his temporary generator. That's what the teen had dedicated the remainder of his time towards, to salvaging the butchered equipment and repairing the Fenton thermos now that there was no need for an energy reserve. The teen had found some instruments in a lower kitchen drawer, for some things appeared to be common around the globe. Simplistic the tools may have been, Fenton tech itself was easy to make due to being created in a basement. After waking up, Tsukachi had had to visit his working place for a couple of bureaucratic matters. The man had left some money to order a takeout. Before leaving in a hurry, the teen wanted to get one matter out of the way. It was one of his most cherished secrets, but since Tsukachi already knew his real name, what he was capable of, the teen didn't want to maintain an incessant facade. His ghost and human halves both demanded his attention. A human needed to sleep, eat and fulfill the bodily needs that fueled his other half. A ghost needed to expunge the pent-up energies, lest he combusted in a gruesome manner. Danny couldn't get proper rest or nourishment while being in his spectral form. This couldn't go like this for years to come. So, the teen decided to shed some light on his condition. As he clumsily used the chopsticks to eat the first piece of sushi, much to the Japanese man's amusement, Danny finally decided that that was it. Hey, old man, Danny started slowly. Since you are letting me stay over, there is something I have to tell you. Nobody around knows about this yet, but I understand that hiding it from you now is pointless. Tsukachi silently nodded, his attention fully focused on the boy's story. Okay, don't freak out. Before Tsukachi could ask what was happening, a bright ring of pearly white lights surrounded the half-ghost. And before he knew it, in front of him sat a perfectly normal teenager, raven hair, blue eyes, and also clothes that weren't an improvised hero costume. The detective only stared, putting the chopsticks away. Are you a shapeshifter, too? No, Danny shook his head. I only have two. That's my casual one. Tsukachi hummed in thought, before speaking again. So you use another one to maintain a secret identity, I presume. Pretty much. Phantom always saved the day while little useless Fenton was busy sitting in a locker. Danny spoke dramatically. Fun thing is, my bully really seemed to be a fan of my hero/vigilante part. Poor Dash, if only he knew. One of these days I really would need you to write every power of yours down. The list would be incomplete. Danny smirked and sipped from a can of cola. Why? Tsukachi asked, suddenly growing worried. Let's just say I know where my power ceiling is, and I am still far away from it. From the man's look, Danny could see that Tsukachi wanted him to elaborate. Well, I really want to learn teleportation, or how to make portals. This will probably take a while, though. How even? I should probably stop being surprised. Tsukachi shook his head. Was it really that simple for him? Danny so casually spoke of learning a new power that it made the detective uncomfortable. What would the boy be like when that power ceiling was actually reached? Could he learn abilities at a whim, or was there some predisposition? The world really dodged a bullet when the teen decided to pursue a more righteous path rather than trying to carve himself a criminal empire like certain others did. Tsukachi shook his head and pushed away the pessimistic thoughts. He couldn't let his speculations ruin what little of bond he had managed to establish. On another matter, we probably need to help you get a better accommodation. The room you took is pretty much empty, and I've taken a look at your clothes. What's with so many white and red shirts? Those are my favorites. Danny crossed his hands. So are we going shopping tomorrow? Yes, luckily I have a day off tomorrow, and I tried to put some matters out of the way so that we won't get interrupted much. The man could see a tiny smile forming on the boy's face. Perhaps his diligence left a good impression on him. You don't have to, really. I got all I need. I tend to disagree. It's no sweat off my back, Danny, really. I live alone now that my sister is currently abroad, so. You never mentioned it before. This topic never came up. It's a story for another day, though. Tsukachi scratched his temple. When Makoto learns about you, she will really keep rubbing it into my face, he said in a tired tone. Why would she do that? We disagreed a lot about vigilantes, and now I have taken in one such person. Danny cackled. Glad I am not the only one who disagrees with ya, old man. Tsukachi narrowed his black eyes, but let the comment slide. Don't you have siblings? I too have a sister, responded Danny, albeit with much less enthusiasm this time. He sighed and crossed his hands. Wonder how she is doing. The detective understood how sensitive the topic was, so it was probably better to not push a painful button yet. Well, Tsukachi rose from his seat. I will be in the living room if you need me. Danny, no sneaking out, I get it. Wasn't going to. I like my sleep as much as the next guy. Danny returned to his room and, for the lack of anything better to do, continued the process of repairing the thermos. The half-ghost didn't know why he was doing it, but this was more of an innate desire of every Fenton to delve into endless tinkering. There wasn't really any need to create an anti-ghost weapon in a world where there were none other than him. But it was strangely relaxing to fully invest himself in the process. Before he knew it, the clocks on the wall struck 11 p.m., with the thermos being half-heartedly put back together. The teen wasn't going to test it just then, but at least the lights around the metal surface were back on. Worst comes to worst, he would have a neat night lamp and a soup container. Sighing and putting the thermos back on the table, Danny decided to call it a night. After undressing, the boy dropped on a soft bed and thus ascended to the legendary nirvana. It had been weeks since he slept on a proper bed. The locals may have seen futons as something ordinary, but the teen was still not used to that. At that moment, the teen felt that his decision to stay was correct. Perhaps he did so prematurely, but Danny was too tired to reconsider. Next morning, the teen woke up early enough to come across Tsukachi having breakfast. When Danny soundlessly entered the living room, he saw the man jump for a second. Tsukachi then chuckled and put a coffee cup on the glass table by a sofa he was sitting on. Geez, you can be really quiet, Danny. Good morning. Morning, Danny yawned. So, when are we going? After we eat, I think. No reason to postpone it. Want some biscuits? I have some left over. Why not? Danny thought, before one of the sweet treats quickly flew into his hand. As he chewed on it, a question arose in the teen's mind. Why do you even have those? What? Can't a man enjoy treats like these? You probably shouldn't just eat them straight away. I have some tea, too. No, I'm good, Danny said and picked another one, landing on a sofa near the officer. Geez, these are tasty. I can relate. I'll show you the place making them one of these days. Tsukachi smiled. After the improvised breakfast, the two of them set off to a place Danny hadn't heard of before. After that, the situation grew a bit less pleasant. The commuting process greatly vexed the teen, because Tsukachi was adamant about one thing. No, he could not fly there, because that was using the quirk out in the open. So that was it. Instead of a straight flight that would have taken a few moments, they had to drive there for about half an hour. Tsukachi was not blind. He could see the teen's huge displeasure, but there was little he could say at the time that would make Danny see things his way. Danny already proved to be as stubborn as a mule, refusing to see how the abuse of his powers could lead to troubles down the line. That was often the case for people with strong quirks. They itched to use them a lot, and the boy's enthusiasm was proportional to his potential. Kiashi Ward Shopping Mall they called it, and that was certainly a mouthful to pronounce. After leaving the car at the parking lot, the two ventured out towards a gargantuan, long structure that was basically one corridor, with many floors and multiple bridges connecting the opposite sides. The place also had no roof, but the day was warm and bright, so there were no complaints yet. Danny was, admittedly, already lost in a myriad of shops of any kind. The assortment of goods of any kind was phenomenal, and the teen didn't know what he was to do. Thankfully, his stickler guardian came to the rescue, opening a notepad. Alright, let's see. First, we would need to buy you some clothes. I haven't seen you wear any other shoes, by the way. Yeah, Danny lightly lifted one of his legs, staring at a sneaker. I never had that many. Only these and the boots of my other form. I see. We'd need at least another pair or you are going to wear them out too soon. Tsukachi seemed to be thinking about something. What is it, old man? It just dawned on me. What's the deal with your clothes when you take another form? I understand the bodily changes to an extent, but this I don't quite get. As Danny went ahead, he started his explanation. Those clothes are not some fabric I'm wearing, he said and put hands in the pockets of his jeans. They are extensions. I wore them when my power awakened, and it sorta remained. Like an image on a film tape. Whenever I transform, those clothes are with me. When I go back, wherever those clothes are, they just vanish. So does that mean you can change them? Never tried to, actually. There was just no need. If I need my casuals, I try to look more human. Tsukachi thought that it made sense, but something still felt amiss, and as they passed another aisle, it dawned on him what exactly. Why were you wearing something like that when your quirk activated? Danny sighed and turned around, his expression neutral. I helped my parents around the lab a lot. Still works for a half-assed hero suit. It also used to have a sticker of my dad's face. Thank God I ripped that one off beforehand or I would be stuck with his grinning mug on my chest. Tsukachi could not resist a chuckle. The man inquired some more and came to learn that the boy's parents were researchers, albeit the teen refused to share what exactly they were studying. Danny was not only reluctant to tell more, but it also visibly pained him to reminisce about those people. Once more the detective wondered how the boy was doing so well mentally with a family environment such as that. Usually it was a recipe for disaster waiting to happen. Tsukachi had to ask Danny if abuse ever took place, and he feared a very adamant reaction. Luckily, the boy merely noted that the man had picked the worst time to ask that. Fenton assured that negligence was more of a running theme, and it explained a lot to the detective. Tsukachi now viewed the boy's rowdy nature in a new light. Danny was not used to an adult paying so much attention to what he did, and thus took a lot of what the man was saying as means to shackle him down. Thankful on the inside for such a useful bit of information, the detective decided not to press on it more. They weren't here for that. The two of them went into the nearest shop, as neither was picky about what to buy, as long as it was nothing too pricey. Tsukachi also insisted that they bought proper patent leather shoes. The confused teen was told that there would be occasions when he simply wasn't allowed wear what he desired. There were places far too respectable, the places with dress codes. Societal norms were like this, and the boy had to wear something proper for once. The tedium of the man's lecture was enough to make Danny go quiet. He didn't even want to retort in his usual sarcastic manner. Logically, after they were done with the issue of shoes, the detective and the half-ghost continued their journey. Despite Danny stating that he was still stronger than average and could carry his stuff on his own, Tsukachi still was carrying half of the bags as he went ahead. Alright, next we will buy you some shirts, Tsukachi said, looking at his notepad again. Any objections? The man received no response, and upon turning around, he noticed the teen's absence. His bewilderment, however, didn't last long. Sup? Tsukachi jumped and glanced around his shoulder, noticing the guffawing Danny with an ice cream in his free hand. "Oh, brother, never gonna get tired from this," he said. "You were saying, when did you even get the ice cream?" "My quirk lets me make the delicious chocolate goodness," Danny said with all seriousness and took a lick of his treat. "Very funny, kid." Tsukachi rolled his eyes. "Don't disappear on me just like that. I was saying that we should go buy clothes now." "Fine, fine. But can we check something unrelated afterwards? There is a lot of amazing stuff around here." Tsukachi knew that something would catch the boy's eye eventually, so he wasn't all that surprised by the request. Sure, the metaphorical inventory was slowly being filled more and more as Tsukachi's credit card balance was steadily going down. Danny in the meantime was growing extremely tired of having to put on so many shirts, pants, trousers and more. At least he got to pick his favorite types of t-shirts, the totally bland ones. However, Detective's insistence on renewing the teen's wardrobe in spite of everything was making the teen uncomfortable on the inside. Danny really didn't mean to be much of a burden expense-wise, but that appeared inevitable with the man's dedication. An admirable trait, if only it always bore fruits. Tsukachi pretended not to hear the teen's remarks and the purchases were made. There were also some other small things that needed to be bought and were unrelated to Danny. After the rush, the two finally sat in one of the cafes at the food court and were having lunch, having decided on some burgers. The topic of food seemed to kickstart their conversation. After all, Tsukachi needed to know what meals the teen preferred for future reference. "Anything, really," Danny shrugged. "As long as it is not alive and is not trying to eat me." "That's an odd request to make. You haven't seen what I've seen, old man. Those sausages emptied our fridge and ate our Thanksgiving turkey." Who was also alive at the time. Imagine the screams. Danny's face became haunted as a part of a joke. But then he returned to eating. "Meh, you people haven't reached the level of nasty burger." "The what?" "We used to have a joint back home under that name. Until recently. Turns out that making a sauce that can, you know, blow up is illegal. They shut the thing down, and honestly, good riddance. Nearly killed several people close to me because someone left an oven on. The burgers were still delicious, though, and it's not like I won't regenerate my dissolved stomach." "You are just a treasure trove of crazy stories, aren't you, kid?" "Hey, I was a vigilante." Danny lowered his voice. "A lot of weird stuff happened. For real, though. I just heated a small packet of sauce and it blew off a part of a metal combat suit. That nasty sauce could be used by terrorists. It does sound like a problem. And how often did you even eat there?" "Since it was the only big chain fast food around, and food back home wanted to eat me, pretty often." You don't look like you ate much. Or did it change because of your lifestyle?" "No, I'm pretty much the same. For one, there are muscles under this shirt. 2, most of what I eat gets turned into pure energy, so my human body doesn't get enough nutrients to bulk up too much. It's fine by me. Never planned on becoming a giant like All Might or anything." Tsukachi chuckled. "Well, girls might still fall for a pretty face, so not all is lost." "Great, he hasn't been my guardian for 2 days and he is already making dad jokes." "Lame," Danny moaned. After a while Tsukachi let the teen go around the shops on his own while he himself waited at the same place with a cup of coffee. Danny was honestly eager to simply browse the place, but several thousand yen were now in his pocket, alongside his last savings. He was free to buy some stuff for his room, and it was sweet of the detective to consider it. Phantom had several stops to make, so he went straight to it. For one, he actually bought himself a small rocket model that he had seen. Cold vacuum or not, space rockets were cool. He was told by the seller that few were actually interested in such goods. Danny was indeed surprised to learn that he was holding the Model 1 and only manned rocket launched into space. For all the apparent technological prowess this world had, the space exploration was severely lagging behind. The seller blamed it on quirks, but Danny didn't know enough to make his own assumptions. But when some quirks could make resources out of thin air, it was logical that the want to explore was eradicated. Phantom didn't blame them. Perhaps they visited space and arrived to the same conclusion Danny had reached. He was more interested in exploring other worlds. Or the world, to be exact. Next the boy wanted to learn about was what music the locals listened to. He most certainly wasn't going to find any of his favorite bands around there, but that was the beauty of it. This was an unmarked territory for the boy's melomaniac side, which he didn't have the time nor resources to explore. That's what made him walk around several CD shops. Some would call them obsolete, but Danny's phone was an ancient relic. He couldn't exactly use music services. The teen considered himself a rock music connoisseur, but nobody around would believe him. All his knowledge was useless in a world where the familiar celebrities did not exist. So, as the teen stared at the shelves with colorful CD covers, he was oddly perplexed. The shop specifically sold the American stuff, as was evident from the names of the singers and the language used. Danny simply didn't know what he should buy. Eventually, the teen stopped overthinking it and just picked a couple of random discs that were more modern. Smiling, the teen went on to buy those. In the meantime, Tsukachi was waiting for someone. Them coming to the mall served two purposes at once. Yes, Danny was getting the stuff he needed most, but there was also something else. That's why the detective sent the kid off, because for a while the man didn't want the teen to hear it. Fenton was surely going to put a couple of unnecessary comments. The discussion was important. Soon enough, the person Tsukachi was waiting for appeared in the crowd, wearing loose pants and a long sleeve. The gaunt, thin man with disproportionately large limbs eventually noticed the detective, and with a smile emerging on his angular face he approached the table. "Tsukachi-san, it is good to see you." "Toshinori-san." Tsukachi nodded and smiled. "Thank you for choosing to come. It's really important. I've watched the news." "Tsukachi-san," Toshinori butted in, sounding worried. "There was an attack on a jewelry store. Are you doing all right?" "Yes, I'm fine." Tsukachi rubbed the wounded spots. "However, we wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for someone. I'd like to thank them." Then the blonde chuckled. "It's better that we wait. I specifically sent the boy off so that we could talk in private." Toshinori blinked. "You didn't say he is a boy." 15 years of age, actually. "He is also the reason I called you, and I probably would need an advice." Toshinori gave him a smile. "You consoled me on more than one occasion. It's only fair I return the favor." Eraser had made an arrest 2 days ago. Young Daniel was caught at the scene of crime while we were trying to bust an illegal workshop. We first suspected his involvement, but he surrendered without putting up a fight. The interrogation showed that although he did make a purchase, he only bought nuts and bolts for an illegal upgrade, figuratively speaking. Yet, the boy is not a criminal. During that ambush in a jewelry store, Danny came to rescue me, knowing I could arrest him right there. He didn't even try to run afterwards. The boy sounds like a very upstanding person. "But what is concerning you, Tsukachi-san?" The detective made a sigh. "Perhaps upstanding by his own standards, which do not always coincide with our laws. Danny used to be a vigilante in America and sees nothing illegal in such actions. Still, I made a decision to be the boy's legal guardian. Gods know he needs it. Why would he need a guardian? Because the boy was ousted from his home. I suspect his parents hated him for having a quirk." Tsukachi said grimly, noticing the sympathetic expression on his friend's face. "The boy has been fending on his own for some time, living in an abandoned shack with no electricity or running water, earning the living in a small-time shop. Even if his quirk mitigated some woes, this is no way for a child to live." "I fully agree. Is this guardianship a way to repay him for saving your life?" "Yes, this is a major factor. But there is also something else, and it might interest you as well." At this point, Tsukachi dug in his coat. "This is nothing but pure speculation, a series of coincidences that for a second appeared in my head." He took out a photo and put it on the table. It was a picture of Danny in his ghost form taken in custody. Toshinori stared at the image, and at that oddly familiar smirk that mocked him. "The physical resemblance is on point," Tsukachi continued. "You are correct. It is a very wild speculation." The hero in disguise responded firmly. "I would have dismissed it, too. After all, this isn't even the boy's true appearance. Most of the time he has raven hair and blue eyes. This," Tsukachi tapped on the photo, "is him using the power at his disposal. And this potential, it greatly concerns me. I have observed only a handful of what he is capable of. Invisibility, intangibility, enormous physical strength, laser beams and ice. He also healed the wounds inflicted upon him in a blink. And he spoke so casually about learning new powers of teleportation like it was a beach walk for him." Toshinori's eyes went wide as saucers. "That's an astonishing power. Enough to make us both worried about parallels, isn't it?" "Indeed. But you still took him in. The boy has a good heart, Toshinori. But I called you specifically to give me some advice. What do you think? Am I making the right choice?" The detective's friend rubbed his chin in thought. "I don't know the boy enough to make proper conclusions. But if you are convinced that the boy has good in him, then it is only proper that he receives guidance from someone as upstanding as you." "Thank you," Tsukachi smiled. "But it won't be easy. The kid is as stubborn as it gets. That's why I thought about something. You told me you will be teaching at the UA. Toshinori stared. "That's your solution, huh?" "Danny is itching to use his powers. This will give him the chance he seeks. And he will also get a proper education which I, as his guardian, must provide. This seems like a good option. I'm sure that the teachers of your school can help him not to stray from the path of good." "That's a very good idea," Toshinori nodded. If he gets in, we will certainly do the best on our part. And glad to have your support. Now we have to convince Danny himself. Wait, you didn't talk to him about this yet? Not really, but he is a smart kid, probably thought about it at some point. Education is important, no matter what kind. You want him to take a hero course, don't you? That would be most preferable. His quirk is incredibly versatile, but being a hero will help him utilize the full power. He still has to pass your famed tests, however, that he has. What say you about his academic prowess? I didn't have many chances to observe it, but since he was making an illegal upgrade on his own, he at least has an understanding of certain fields. Yesterday evening I've noticed him welding an old thermos. I'm not sure what he intends to do with it. Thermos, Toshinori scratched his temple in thought. What even is there to tinker with? I'd wager it is not a simple thermos. Doesn't look like an upgrade, either. Too outlandish. Point is, the boy is technically gifted, even if he refuses to take the credit for it. The boy does have certain self-esteem issues. I suspect it stems from the neglectful parenting. Danny must be able to score enough during the written test, and I am certain he will be one of the best performers during the practical exam. After all, he has the power and the experience. I saw him in action. 3 criminals dispatched in a minute, the captives unharmed. The damage to the shop is minimal. I may disagree with what he was doing, but it was a professional and clean job. You are basking him in praises, as I see. Don't let him hear that, Tsukachi chuckled. He may be overly critical of his intellect, but his abilities are something he brags about non-stop. There is always a room for growth. True, I can't wait to see him in action. You really should get his answer soon, because we will stop accepting papers in a week, and the exam is only 1 month away from now. I know we should hurry. I just hope there won't be any last-minute issues. It was good meeting you, Toshinori-san. I'll call you later, is that alright? Of course, I'll be waiting. Tell me about the final decision and I will help you as much as I can. I think it is my cue to leave. Alright, don't want to interrupt you from your job. Toshinori smiled and nodded before leaving. Tsukachi watched the man leave, glad that the conversation went so well. He returned to his coffee, finding that it had cooled down significantly. He didn't have to wait for long. Danny returned very soon after that, carrying only a couple of small bags. Hey, old man. The boy greeted and sat nearby. I'm done. Here is the money that remained, he said and returned the yen bills. A single look at them was enough for Tsukachi to understand something. But you haven't spent anything. Danny rubbed the back of his neck. I still had the earnings from my job. And it's not like I bought much. The teen raised his bag. Upon hearing this, Tsukachi could not resist a chuckle as he moved the bills back to Danny. Keep them as an allowance, then, he smiled. I'm sure you'll find something eventually. Fine, Danny sighed and still took them. He didn't want to argue in public over something so trivial. Do we have something else to buy? No, I think we are free to go home. But there is something important we have to talk about. What is it? I'd really like to hear your opinion on that. Tsukachi smiled. But first tell me what you bought. The detective couldn't help his curiosity. He asked the teen about what he had purchased and was somewhat reassured. Danny was the most bizarre kid he had ever met, but it was also a good call that the teen's interests were not different from other kids his age. Danny was interested in music, in spaceships and games. Tsukachi was reminded that he was facing a normal child first and foremost. His power was only secondary. Phantom also was eager to talk about his interests, and his guardian complied with the duty to listen. Not that he minded much. They didn't notice how they got inside the car, and after a while the teen remembered that there was something important that Tsukachi wanted to talk about. Danny, what do you think about going to school? The question caught the teen off guard. Well, I did think about this a lot, I admit. I won't get anywhere in life without finishing a high school. Are you telling me you got it covered? The document part? Yes. Have you heard about the UA? UA? Huh? Danny asked with slightly less enthusiasm. You mean that famous and elite hero school? You sound apprehensive. I thought that that's what you would want, Danny. What's with your vigilantism and our arguments? The teen sighed, straightening in his seat. Then your deduction skills wronged you. Tsukachi-san, hasn't it crossed your mind that I didn't do vigilantism here for a reason? I needed a break from that shit. I remember. I understand that it might have been too much pressure, but I assure you, Danny, a licensed hero doesn't have to deal with the same things you went through. It is orderly, the burden is shared between all heroes. This isn't very convincing. Old man, Danny grumbled. Why are you so adamant that I go there? Let me guess, Daniel, you will squander your potential. he mocked. I admit, this is something I'd like to point out. Of course you would. It's the most sound argument. Let's do it like this, Danny. Tell me, what image do you have of your future then? I am not sure. Isn't this what you decide when going to college? Sometimes it is necessary to make a decision beforehand. Some choices affect our lives a lot down the line, Danny. You chose to come to Japan and thus we happened to meet. You really have an enormous potential, Danny. You can become an excellent hero, someone who can save countless lives. That's what you are doing back at home. Don't let a series of misfortunes bury your talents. Danny smiled, although the smile held little positivity. This argument could have worked on me. But with all due respect, Tsukachi-san, you've known me for only 2 days. You still don't know a lot about me. Then tell me. Danny, I respect your reluctance to share, but don't make it my fault. We have plenty of time. I have looked at you enough to know such key things. Are you telling me that you are a criminal, a self-serving egoist, or maybe someone capable of murder? Danny, I know you are none of these things, but quite the contrary. You can't even spend others' money without extra urging. I did leave my town. I gave up because I was tired, Danny responded. Do you really have a need for a hero that just goes away? Because you knew someone can take over, didn't you? I remember what you told me. That was mostly just an excuse, the boy argued. I told myself and everyone that this is my responsibility, and then I just abandoned it all. Tsukachi was unprepared for the sudden resistance Danny was showing. It didn't end there, however. It's not like I became a hero because I wanted. I had no chance to argue. I either got stronger or they killed me. There was no middle ground. Before I knew it, I was too deep in this to change anything. The people I defended against took exception to that and eventually all of it formed a vicious circle. Yet you beat yourself up because you chose to break this circle. And you are worried about what can happen to the people of your town, too. I say that it is not just a battle for survival. I've met a lot of different people, Danny. I've seen the victim type. You don't strike me as one, is all. In order to become a detective, you have to know how to read people. My quirk is handy, but it won't make everything clear on its own. And what exactly is this type? Are you perhaps having thoughts that you deserve being neglected or that you deserve the constant fight for your life? No. I didn't do anything to get a holes for parents. See? Next question then. Are you feeling that I am taking advantage of you? That certainly doesn't sound dubious, responded Danny sarcastically. No, I don't think so. At least yet. Once again, you answered wrong. A positive answer would have hinted at a self-defeating behavior, a clear sign of victimhood mindset. If you ever hit such lows, I don't see any traits of anything but the next, positive phase. Even your sarcasm is a testament to that. Is there a reason you are giving me a psychology lecture? I don't get it. Just what I said before. You are not concerned as much about the pain it caused you, but about others, still. I say that this level of responsibility is what a hero really needs. Tell me, if a fireman, or me, a policeman, decides to quit the job for the same reason as you, does it make them any worse? While it is different, really, is a fireman jumping into a burning house any less of a hero than you are? That's not what I meant, Danny said with a flustered expression. I know, my point still remains. People get tired, it is inevitable, and it doesn't make them worthy of scorn. Well, as long as you don't decide to quit in the middle of a rescue operation. That would be running away. Exactly. That is something you didn't do. No, you went through a lot, and from what I see, you received no gratitude and your own parents disowned you. I think that's enough of a reason to quit for a child like you. Don't beat yourself up about this, Danny. Just come at it from a proper direction and I guarantee that it will work out for you this time. The world needs good heroes, and after everything you experienced, both good and bad, you will make an excellent one. Danny didn't look Tsukachi in the eyes. The man got him thinking, and the teen wasn't really sure what to do. The detective must have studied well, and he and Jazz would have got along. Both loved to pry into the teen's skull. Tsukachi made a good point, and his cheesy encouragement worked wonders. But this was a difficult path to take. To become a hero once more, full-time, dedicate his life to the job of crime fighting. Danny felt surprisingly at ease with the idea. The plan Tsukachi provided was perhaps the clearest, the best laid out, certainly more than what the teen had managed to come up with. A hero school was certainly better than none at all. And if the teen was brutally honest with himself, fighting was one of the few things he was good at. Unbeknownst to him, Tsukachi was unwittingly using the teen's self-esteem to tilt the opinion in a proper direction. I still can work elsewhere if it doesn't work out for me, right? Tsukachi nodded. This is not something I'd like, but yes, UA still provides top-notch education in all subjects. I'm certain many people would like to hire you afterwards. Danny finally smiled again. Then I guess I have no choice, he said dramatically, stood up, and put one of his legs on a chair. On to rescue the damsels and save the kingdom. and if I don't like it, to conquer the world. Upon seeing the unamused expression Tsukachi held, the boy smirked. Oh, don't be like that, old man. I'm still gonna get you a castle for your kind service. If there was one thing the detective marveled at, it was how quickly the teen bounced back. The quality that would certainly find a good use. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author RusEmp on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.